The story begins with a woman asking her son to introduce himself to someone. Our protagonist's mother introduces him to a girl named Lee Minche, who was a friend's daughter and would be living on the second floor of their house. Annoyed, the nerd says his mother couldn't just bring a girl to live with them, but the woman retorts that the house was hers. Embarrassed, the boy can't even look the girl in the eyes and lowers his head in greeting. Lee extends her hand to greet the boy and introduces herself, also saying it's a pleasure to meet him. The boy extends his hand and, embarrassed, shakes the girl's hand with just a few of his fingers, saying it's nice to meet her, and introduces himself as Kim Jae-hyuk. Jae-hyuk starts explaining about his house, mentioning it has 2 floors. He adds that the second floor was used as storage and the first floor is where he and his mother live, so the old storage room would be Lee's bedroom. The girl asks our protagonist if he attends Yeoman High School, then mentions she's transferring there. With a beautiful smile showcasing her beauty, she says they'll get along well. Kim continues avoiding eye contact, merely confirming, while his thoughts wonder if the girl will indeed transfer to the school. The boy's mother begins to leave and asks her son to help the girl organize her room, and the boy simply agrees. Lee asks the lady to take care on her way to work, and the nerd, noticing the girl's composure, remarks that she is very polite. He continues feeling embarrassed and shy, thinking he really couldn't talk well with girls. Lost in his own thoughts, the girl calls him, and the boy becomes a bit confused. After calling our protagonist, the girl starts rummaging through his pocket, taking out a cigarette, and immediately asks if he has a lighter, making him startled. With a completely different demeanor, the girl asks again if the boy has a lighter or a match at home and calls him an idiot. Noticing the change in the girl's personality, the boy realizes she might be a bully. Lee then walks up to our protagonist and asks why he's not responding. With a disgusted expression, she says the boy can't even look her in the eye or respond. Still acting like the nerd he is, the boy remains embarrassed, trying to avoid looking directly at her. With a mocking smile, the girl laughs at the boy and calls him a loser. Hearing that insult, our protagonist gets irritated, recalling some moments he had endured. Later that day, we can see our protagonist's school in the distance. We see some bullies intimidating him, and one of them thanks the boy for giving him bread. The red-haired bully calls the protagonist a loser, and the others around start laughing at him. He continues to be annoyed, hearing all that while telling himself he's not a loser. The boy remembers the beginning of the semester when this guy introduced himself to him, calling him a friend and treating him nicely. The bully was sitting in front of him, asking our protagonist to go buy some banana milk for him because he was thirsty. However, upon seeing that, Kim is surprised and asks why he should do that and tells the guy to go buy it himself. Suddenly, the bully slaps Kim across the face. Changing his whole personality, the delinquent tells our protagonist to bring it immediately, threatening to kill him if he didn't. Kim is incredulous and shocked, not understanding why he was suddenly attacked. The boy was about to ask his attacker why he did that, but another slap hits his face immediately. The delinquent continues to strike him several times, saying he hit him because the boy answered him incorrectly. While enduring the attacks, Jae-hyuk could only curl up and cry as the bully continues to torment him. We return to the current moment, and Sangbom is complaining because Kim bought red bean bread, which he had already said he didn't like. The boy tries to apologize, saying he forgot, and the bully says it's okay. However, out of nowhere, the delinquent punches the boy hard in the stomach. The bully warms up, saying despite forgiving him for his mistake, he would punish the boy and asks how many punches he wanted to take. While still trying to recover from the intense pain he was feeling, the boy says he wants to take 3 punches. Laughing like a psychopath upon hearing that the boy wants to take 3 punches, the bully calculates and multiplies it by 3, resulting in 9 punches. Then, without mercy, he continues to strike and count the number of attacks he was delivering. One of the bullies in the group warns his friend that the teacher is coming. Sangbom leaves laughing, saying he'll deal with the nerd later. At that moment, all our protagonist could do is cry as he watched the bullies leave, knowing they tormented him every day. The teacher then enters the classroom and asks everyone to sit down. He inquires if any student is absent and informs them that a new student is transferred to their class, gesturing to a girl behind them. The nerd then walks to his seat, and just as he's about to sit down, he looks at the new student. For some reason, he's surprised by something, his eyes widening. We see that the girl is Lee Minche, the new girl who was living on the second floor of his house, and she warmly introduces herself to the class. In a friendly manner, she says it's a pleasure to meet everyone in the class, adding that from now on, she'll get along well with the students. While the other students praise the girl, Kim recognizes her and is in shock. The teacher says they need to find a seat for the girl and looks around for an empty chair. He notices one towards the back just behind Jae-hyuk and asks Lee to sit there. Upon hearing his name, the girl realizes she's heard it somewhere before and looks towards the chair she's about to sit in, realizing what had happened. Lee looks and sees Kim avoiding her gaze, still embarrassed as earlier that morning. She realizes he's the loser nerd who lives on the first floor of the house and gets irritated, asking why the girl had to come to his class. The teacher asks all students to prepare for the start of the class, and the girl takes her seat. Lee sits down and Kim continues sweating with the girl's presence, wondering why she had to sit right behind him. Kim remembers his mother asking him to take care of her since Lee had just moved from another city, but he couldn't do anything because he's a nerd. However, the boy feels a slight nudge from a foot on his rear, becoming confused. He looks back, asking what was poking him. Kim realizes it was Mincha who did it, once again wearing a mocking expression and holding a piece of paper which she throws at him. Still confused before he could say anything, the paper hits his face, startling him. Jae-hyuk opens the note and upon reading it, realizes the girl had written for him to pretend not to know her. The boy closes the note angrily, thinking that even pretending not to know the girl, he couldn't lie. Some more time passes and it's now time for recess at school. The protagonist is sitting at his desk, writing and drawing something on a piece of paper. Despite not liking the girl, Kim thinks being a transferred student is a bit strange and decides to do something about it. He gets up and starts to leave the room, but leaves a piece of paper on Lee's chair before he goes. Upon seeing the paper, the girl becomes confused and asks what it is, but Kim doesn't respond. She opens the paper and realizes it's a map of the entire school to guide her. Upon seeing that and the boy's gesture, she sighs a bit and stays quiet. In the boys' restroom, we see the bullies bothering Jae-hyuk again, and the red-haired bully asks how many punches he should give, and Kim responds. The bully continues with his cold and psychopathic expression, telling our protagonist to bite hard because he's going to punch his jaw. Kim just closes his eyes and bites his lips, continuing to keep his eyes closed and afraid of the punch, cursing Sangbom in his mind. Sangbom moves to deliver the blow and makes a movement with his body, his hand ready to hit Kim's face. However, just as he's about to strike, he opens his fist and places the palm of his hand on the boy's face, leaving him confused. The bully says he won't hit the protagonist again because he's not that bad. Kim asks himself what was wrong with that guy because he was so crazy. The delinquent approaches our protagonist, saying he had to ask him a favor, and the boy asks what it was. He questions if our protagonist was good at studying, leaving the boy a little confused by the sudden question. A chubby guy who is part of the bully group and looks like a druggie says our protagonist seem addicted to games. However, Sangbom counters his friend, stating Kim was good at studying because he heard from the class president that he was top of the school. Meanwhile, Kim thinks he's not a genius but used to do well on tests in the past. Sangbom goes up to him and grabs his hand. Without shame on his face, the delinquent asks the boy to help him with the tests. The nerd becomes even more confused, asking what he meant by helping with tests. Again with his psychopathic expression, Sangbom says he's very stupid, telling the boy to make some cheat sheets for him on the test day. Kim starts sweating, questioning if he really wanted to cheat, and in his thoughts, he asserts that if caught, both of them would be in trouble. Another friend of Sangbom asks why suddenly he wanted to do well on tests, and the delinquent replies that he wants to study abroad. He adds that his mother would only allow him to travel abroad if he does well on tests, and he really wants to leave the country. The boy interrupts the conversation with his friend and looks back at our protagonist, grabbing him by the shoulder. With veins popping from his face and an extremely irritated expression, he asks again if Kim will help or not, cursing the nerd. The boy continues sweating without saying anything while thinking that if caught, he'll be screwed too. Not getting a quick response, the bully immediately uses his knee, hitting him hard in the stomach. Kim doesn't understand the sudden attack and can only spit saliva from his mouth. Immediately, he falls to the ground, kneeling while spitting more, trying to recover from the attack. Sangbom gets closer to the boy who was down and says he'll ask one more time. While patting the nerd lightly on the back, he asks again if the boy will help or not. Crying but maintaining a firm expression, the boy simply replies that he will do it. Sangbom smiles, saying the boy made the right decision because it's better for him to go abroad since Kim won't see him anymore. However, the bully looks at Jae-hyuk's face and sees that the boy is extremely angry. Sangbom asks why he's looking like that. The delinquent gets irritated seeing that defiant look and prepares his fist for another punch. He questions why the boy's face still hasn't given up and punches him. With extreme hatred, he begins to punch over and over again the nerd's face, who can only receive the attacks. With his normal expression back, Kim was crying and blood was flowing from his nose. He smiles at his aggressor and apologizes for looking that way. While wiping the blood from his face, Sangbom replies that this way was better. Sangbom and his gang then start to leave the bathroom, and as they leave, the delinquent says he'll count on him for the tests. As the group leaves, they continue to mock the nerd who was just kneeling in the middle of the bathroom. Speechless, the boy can only cry and see the blood running down his nose and face. Assuming an expression of anger again, the boy says he didn't want to be good at studying, but good at fighting, because he wanted to defend himself. And after a long day of classes, the sun begins to set, radiating with an orange light all the clouds. When we see it was already night, and we go back to the protagonist's residence. Inside, Kim's mother was preparing dinner, and beside her was the boy helping. She calls the boy and asks him to go upstairs and call Min Cha. The boy is incredulous and asks why, and the woman replies that they were going to have dinner together. Kim is shocked, thinking it was very strange for him to eat alongside a girl. But the boy's mother convinces him, explaining that they are living in the same house, so it's natural to eat together. He starts climbing the stairs and reluctantly affirms in his thoughts that now that they live together, they won't have anything else to do. When he reaches the second floor, he goes to the girl's room door and knocks on it. Jae-hyuk starts calling the girl's name and realizes there was no response, wondering if she was really there. A soft sound telling him to come in can be heard, and upon hearing that, the boy thinks the girl had allowed him to enter, so he opens the door. But in reality, we see she was just singing along to a song playing on her phone, and the girl had just come out of the bathroom wrapped in a towel. Seeing that the boy had basically invaded her room, the girl curses at him. As a reaction, she grabs a kettle nearby and throws it, hitting the boy's head squarely. With no time for any reaction, the boy can only see the kettle coming at him, and upon impact, he falls to the ground. The object hit the poor boy's head squarely, and he could only lie on the floor unconscious. After a while unconscious, the girl nudges him with her foot. She keeps calling Kim's name, stepping on the poor boy, and finally, Jae-hyuk starts to wake up slowly. We see Minchi already fully dressed, calling our protagonist a loser and telling him to wake up. Realizing the situation, the boy immediately wakes up, standing and asking what had happened. The girl bows and explains that he had been knocked out by the kettle. Again with her mocking expression, Minchi asks if he's some kind of pervert, questioning why he invaded a girl's room without warning. Kim tries to explain, apologizing and saying he thought she had told him to enter, affirming next that his mother had asked him to call Lee for dinner. As he heads towards the door with a threatening aura, the girl warns that if he invades her room again without an invitation, she'll rip his limbs off. With a look of disdain, she calls Kim a disgusting creep. Already seated at the dining table, we see the girl take a spoonful of food into her mouth and then break into a huge smile as if the food were amazing. Lee compliments our protagonist's mother on the incredible food, saying it's delicious, and the woman is extremely grateful. Kim's mother explains that Lee's mother had mentioned she likes soybean paste stew, so she decided to prepare it. Giving a thumbs up to the woman, the girl says this was definitely the best soybean paste stew she had ever eaten and praises the woman as the best. Jae-hyuk, who is also at the table, remains quiet, lost in his thoughts, questioning to himself if the girl is polite with adults or rude only to him. The boy's mother asks why Minchu moved there alone. The girl is a little embarrassed and says it's awkward, but she'll explain. She explains she came there to study, which surprises Kim. Due to the girl's personality, he is completely shocked and impressed and asks if she really came for that. However, seeing the boy's reaction doubting her, Minchi again makes a disgusted expression. Lady explains the main reason was that her grandfather owned a building in the countryside. He had promised to pass it on to any of his grandchildren who attended a university in Seoul. Kim's mother is also surprised to hear this and says her grandfather was very kind. Minchi explains she's using this as motivation to study hard, but that's not the only reason. She informs them that since they live in the countryside, there's no suitable school there, and she's only been into sports since she was young, so studying is something new for her. Because of this set of reasons, the girl had come to Seoul in search of education. Kim's mother is happy to hear this, saying it was a good decision and that the girl could become the owner of a building. Kim Jae-hyuk remains silent, just listening to the situation, and comments that his grandfather giving away a building was impressive, wondering what sport the girl practiced. However, while he was silent, his mother slaps his back, saying he's the perfect person to study well because he's the unique and incomparable top student, Kim Jae-hyuk, who has always excelled academically. Upon hearing that, the girl is astonished and asks if he really is the top student. She points at our protagonist, asking again if the boy is really number one, and he confirms it. Against our protagonist's will, the woman continues speaking, asserting that her son, despite looking dumb, has never lost his place at the top. After analyzing the situation for a while, the girl sees this could be the perfect opportunity to help her. Outside, we see a beautiful full moon night with the sky completely cloudy. While washing the dishes, the woman tells the girl she can go upstairs if she wants. The girl goes to her and bows, thanking her for the meal, and the woman simply says you're welcome. The boy, observing the situation, says he can't figure out the girl's personality. Unexpectedly, Lee walks up to the boy, calling him a loser again, saying she wants to talk to him. We see the beautiful moonlight illuminating all the buildings around the boy's house. Outside, Lee and Kim are descending a large staircase near the boy's house. As they descend, the boy asks how far they are going, and the girl remains silent. Upon reaching the end of a dark alley, the girl crouches down, pulls out another cigarette, and lights it with a lighter. With a happy expression, the girl calls the boy number one and asks him to teach her how to study. Kim is a bit surprised, not expecting to hear that from someone like her. Even reluctant and nervous, the boy simply refuses, surprising the girl. Lee becomes completely irritated and asks why, stating that if she became the owner of the building, she'd give him a share. Even with the tempting offer, he refuses again and turns to head upstairs. He explains that the reason for not helping her is not that, stating seriously that he hates bullies and doesn't want to teach that kind of person to study. Jae-hyuk starts up the stairs to return home, stating he's leaving and telling the girl to finish her cigarette and go home. The girl sees her chance to become the owner of a building slipping away and curses. She tries to convince the boy again, saying she'll introduce him to a girl if he helps. Minchi says she has plenty of hot friends back in her town and continues yelling at the boy. Even so, the boy is determined, thinking to himself that even if they're beautiful, they're probably bullies and rotten inside. However, suddenly the girl mentions a girl who likes his type and claims she has gigantic balloons. He hesitates a bit, realizing it's a tempting offer. But again, he shakes his head in a no, sticking to his principles. Kim tells himself that even though it's a very tempting offer, he can't fall into that temptation. However, a completely different voice speaks up, asking the girl to introduce this friend to him. Kim turns and sees 3 bullies close to the girl, trying to intimidate her. The boy realizes who those people are and remembers that some delinquents usually hang around that neighborhood. The leader of the bully group, a fat guy, starts harassing Lee, calling her hot and saying she doesn't need to introduce any other girl because she'll do. Reaching out to the girl, he asks where she studies, then invites her to go drinking with them. Minche continues with her head down, saying she doesn't want to, and asks them to leave. They keep trying to convince her, and our protagonist, seeing the situation, starts to panic, trying to think of what he can do. Kim looks around but sees everything is empty, and there's no one nearby to help them. The fat guy grabs the girl's hand and asks her not to play hard to get because she likes guys like them, trying to lift her up. Jae-hyuk continues in complete desperation, then takes out his phone, trying to call 911 and summon the police. Still with a serious expression, Minche agrees and says she does like guys. Thinking he's gotten the upper hand, the fat guy starts laughing and asks again for the girl to go drinking with them. However, she hadn't finished speaking and stands up, walking over to the man and putting her hands behind his neck. She finishes by saying he's not a man but a filthy pig, then uses her hands to pull his head down and lands a knee right on his chin. Jae-hyuk, witnessing the girl's reaction, is completely shocked, wondering what that was. The delinquent, taking the blow, can't do anything but get knocked out. Then, with extreme force and impact from the blow, the guy immediately collapses unconscious on the ground. Kim is impressed by this, asking if the girl really just knocked out a guy of that size with just her knee. The other 2 who were with him get angry, and one of them says he's going to kill the girl and moves towards her. As he curses the girl, he tries to punch her. She gets into a fighting stance, and as he watches, he comments that she looks like a black belt in martial arts. Completely irritated, a delinquent next to the girl throws a punch trying to hit her. But before he can even understand what happened, he's hit with a counterpunch in his nose, causing it to spurt blood. Taking advantage of this opening, the girl lands another punch on his face and chin. After the onslaught of attacks, the delinquent immediately collapses unconscious on the ground too. Our protagonist continues to watch the scene incredulously, unable to believe what's happening right in front of him. The pumped-up delinquent from the group, seeing his friends being taken down, gets furious. With arrogance, he curses at the girl and asks who she thinks she is. As he runs toward her, he boasts about being part of the weightlifting club and being a black belt in Taekwondo. However, when he tries to throw a punch at her, Lee effortlessly dodges his attack. She then executes a spinning elbow strike, landing it right on his jaw. Despite being twice her size, with just one blow, he collapses unconscious. Around the girl were 3 people lying unconscious, but she hadn't uttered a word, as if all of it were normal. Perplexed, Kim wonders what he had just witnessed, noting that the girl had knocked out 3 guys in an instant. Recalling the girl who mentioned at dinner that she played sports, he starts putting the pieces together as he descends the staircase, asking if the sport she mentioned was. Approaching, he calls out to the girl, who is inspecting her own fist. Upon seeing him, she gets irritated, realizing he had been there all along, and states he could have called the police. Even hesitating, he asks what sport she had practiced. Confused, Lee sighs, seeing the boy's expression. She then reveals she practiced martial arts, leaving Kim a bit nervous, swallowing hard. The boy recalls all the bullying he endured from Sangbom and clenches his fists, thinking this could be a unique opportunity. Kim repeats the girl's name and says he'll teach her how to study. Minche is suddenly surprised by his decision, but Jae-hyuk adds that in return, she'll teach him how to fight. After our protagonist's statement, silence settles between the 2 young people. However, with a furious and cold expression, the girl says it's impossible. Kim is confused at his offer being refused, as he thought that couldn't happen, and asks why it's impossible. Now with a disgusted expression, the girl gets irritated and asks if the boy knew what teaching martial arts involved. She explains that martial arts involve a lot of physical contact, meaning they would have to be close and smelling each other. Cursing the boy, she says she would never do something like that with him and orders him to go train in a gym. But upon hearing that, the boy informs her he had a reason not to go because all the bullies from school go to gyms all over the city. Adjusting a strand of her hair, Lee says the problem was entirely his, and anyway, she couldn't do that with a loser. Turning to leave, she says she would take care of her own studies, and he should figure out on his own how to fight. Watching her walk away, the protagonist tries to say something but hesitates, thinking he just thought it was a good offer. The 3 bullies who were knocked out start waking up and wondering what they were doing there, and immediately Kim runs home. Then we see that it was later that day, and it was already early in the morning at the boy's house. The boy was still awake even though it was so late, imagining and remembering the fight he had seen earlier. He asserts that even among the strongest bullies at his school, he had never seen anyone fight like that. Then several memories of what happened earlier come to his mind, including all the knockouts the girl inflicted on the other delinquents. Head down, Kim says that if he could learn to fight from someone like her, it would be really amazing. Because if that could happen, he would have a chance against those bullies, and remembers Sangbon tormenting him. The next morning, the boy's mother calls him to wake up. As she leaves, she says she's going to work and asks her son to eat the sandwich she made and give the other one to Minche. With 2 sandwiches in his hand, the boy asks if he really has to deliver the other one to the girl, and his mother asks him to do it for her. Unhappy with the situation, the boy says that having to see that girl early in the morning was a bit intimidating. He starts up the stairs thinking that maybe the young woman might have changed her mind about yesterday. Kim asks himself if he should offer the proposal again and knocks on the girl's door, calling out to her. Chae-jaek realizes once again that the girl wasn't answering and he couldn't enter or she would freak out again. He crouches down, and just as he's about to place the sandwich on the floor, the girl asks him to come in. Reluctantly, Kim opens the door to the room and asks again if he should come in, and the girl answers yes, so the boy goes inside. Upon entering, his vision is blurred by a radiant beauty, and Minchi was only wearing a blouse. Embarrassed, the boy covers his eyes and shouts, thinking he caught the girl in an intimate moment. But she calls him a pervert and lifts her shirt, revealing she had shorts underneath. Still embarrassed by the whole situation, Kim apologizes and extends his hand with a sandwich, saying his mother asked him to deliver it. Lee continues brushing her teeth while messing with her phone and asks the boy to leave the food and go away. Minchi goes to the bathroom, and at that moment, Kim leaves the sandwich near the dresser that was there. But while he's putting away the lunch, the boy shifts his attention, noticing some textbooks next to him. As he recalls that the girl had said she came to Seoul alone to study, he notices something strange about the books. Reading the cover of one of them, Kim realizes they are elementary school textbooks. While snooping through one of the books, Kim refuses to believe the girl was still learning that kind of content and assumes she must have brought some old books. However, upon reading further, the boy notices that the books seem to have been used recently. And upon digging a little more, the boy realizes that all the books there were elementary school level. Kim remembers the moment the girl had mentioned during dinner that she lived in the countryside and didn't have a proper school in her town. The girl finishes brushing her teeth and exits the bathroom, questioning why the boy was still there. With an expression still disbelieving, our protagonist asks the girl if she was really studying with those books. She looks to where the boy was pointing and notices he was showing her study materials. Being extremely proud, Lee is completely embarrassed, avoiding his gaze. And irritated, she walks up to him, pushing him against the wall. Furious, Minchi says she wasn't his friend and it wasn't because he was in her room going through her things. Startled by all this intimidation, the boy simply says okay and apologizes, withdrawing immediately. But before leaving, the boy mentions again what he had talked about yesterday. And he remembers once more the proposal he had made to teach the girl how to study, and in return, she would teach him how to fight. Kim starts to leave the room, saying if the girl changed her mind, she should talk to him. Kim explains that since she didn't even know the basics, no prep course would accept her. This meant it would be extremely difficult for her to study alone. And he adds that if she wanted to study at a university in Seoul, he could be her tutor. But the girl was tired of hearing the boy's voice, and as he leaves, she throws one of the books at the door, telling him to leave immediately. Then some time passes, and after school, we see it's already evening at our protagonist's house. Kim's mother asks again that he take food to the girl, and the boy agrees and goes upstairs. However, the front door of the house suddenly opens. The boy, who had just reached the second floor and was in front of Minchi's room, is interrupted by the girl's voice asking what he was doing there. He was uncomfortable with the situation because he didn't want to bring food to her, but explains he was there because his mother had asked. The irritated girl reluctantly tells him to wait a moment and not leave. She continues up the stairs, and our protagonist looks confused, facing Minche, who was angry for some reason. Upon reaching the second floor, the girl approaches the boy while asking to talk to him about something important. Setting aside her pride, Lee explains she had applied to 3 prep courses, but was rejected by all because of the placement test. He asks if she was serious and embarrassed. The girl replies again that she was rejected for being at the level of someone in elementary school. Kim affirms he had warned her, recalling when he said no prep course would accept her because she was at a much lower level. Putting aside her pride, Lee says they were going to do it. And with the protagonist asking what she was talking about, she says the boy would teach her to study and she would teach him to fight. A silence hangs in the room as Kim wasn't expecting that suddenly. The protagonist starts reflecting in his thoughts that on the first day they started tutoring each other. In the girl's room, the boy was writing on a blackboard, saying they would start with a basic English lesson. The girl asks why he was being so formal, and the boy replies that as her tutor, he would act that way during the lesson. But as per the girl's request, he informs her he'll speak less formally and proceeds to give her a small test, asking what this meant. The girl thinks the word means cigarettes, leaving our protagonist confused. He continues with a series of English vocabulary questions, and the girl still doesn't answer anything. Kim becomes completely desperate and anxious, realizing the girl really didn't understand anything, and says they would start with the alphabet. The boy begins explaining the basics of how the English alphabet works because her situation was worse than he thought. After a long period of Kim teaching, the girl announces they would switch to martial arts lessons. She goes to her bed and sits cross-legged, explaining that if you know your opponent, you can easily defeat them. So the first thing they should do is gather information about the target. Sitting on the floor, our protagonist asks if gathering information is something done for fighting, and the girl confirms it, saying you can't defeat someone without knowing their weaknesses. Then Minchi informs they would start with that. On another day, we see Minchi on Kim's shoulders as he helps her see over a wall. Irritated, she questions if the boy was sure the delinquent smoked there, and he confirms. Looking around, she notices a group of bullies approaching the spot. Sangbong, with his typical psycho expression, asks one of his friends for a cigarette. Minchi talks to our protagonist, asking if the redhead boy was the one he would fight, and he confirms. One of Sangbong's friends asks if he was really going to fight later and what had happened, and the boy explains that the guy he was going to fight had been bothering him. The big guy asks where the fight would take place, and Sangbong replies it would be after school in the underground parking lot. Seeing it as an opportunity to discover Sangbong's weaknesses, Lee informs our protagonist about the fight and states they would watch. Still confused hearing that, the boy asks the girl to get off him because she was too heavy, and the girl gets irritated. Because she was heavy and moving too much, the two fall to the ground and Minchi lands on our protagonist's back. The bullies hear the thud of the fall and start wondering where it came from while Lee was scolding the boy for dropping her. Amid two tall blue buildings in the city center, a guard post giving access to the underground can be seen. Jae-gyuk was completely hooded, asking the girl why they were going to watch that fight. While smoking, sitting on the staircase leading to the garage, Lee says it's to observe how Sangbong fights. Minchi adds that Kim should just listen quietly to what she was saying and keep his eyes open. Since early in the day carrying the girl's bag, our protagonist questions if he was really learning to fight since he hadn't practiced anything yet. The girl gets annoyed, asking if he doubted her, then says they were on different levels and the boy just agrees. Then several people start arriving at the place with a group of bullies, and Kim informs the girl they had arrived. She gets up from one of the steps of the stairs and tells the boy they should go down. Down in the basement, we see the same group of people around the two boys who would fight. Kim and Mincha were arriving to watch the fight, but a trio of girls recognizes Lee. The girls walk towards Minche, and their leader realizes Lee was a new student and asks if she came to watch the fight, and Lee replies she was bored. The redhead girl mentions she heard the girl was a troublemaker at her old school and offers a cigarette to Minche, who declines as she had smoked before. At that moment, Jae-hyuk was closing his coat to avoid being recognized, and the girl asks who that guy was, and Lee replies he was just a classmate. Thoughts were flooding Kim's mind because no one could find out who he was because there's an unwritten rule that losers are not allowed to watch fights. One of the girls from the trio looks back and notices the fight was about to start and alerts everyone. Lee turns to our protagonist and asks him to pay attention to the fight. In the center of the circle of people, we see Sangbong, and in front of him, a black-haired boy who looked like a nerd. They continue staring at each other, and the boy seems to harbor a strong hatred towards the bully. Sangbong, with his psycho demeanor, starts cursing the boy, asking why he was a nuisance. However, the nerd ignores him and tells him to stop talking because he had broken his friend's finger, and Sangbong tries to explain it was an accident during soccer. The nerd asks the bully to apologize, and surprisingly, Sangbong apologizes. However, it's not to the boy's friend but to the boy's eyes. Then Sangbong jams his thumb into his opponent's eye, who groans in pain. He takes advantage of the situation and immediately punches the boy's chin, sending him staggering backward. Sangbong, with all his fury, continues the beating, making the boy step back with each blow. The nerd then tries to retaliate by cursing at the delinquent, but is stopped with a kick to the stomach. Another punch lands on Sangbong's opponent's face, who can do nothing more than collapse onto the ground. Defeated, the boy falls and remains on the ground, unable to muster the strength to get up. As everyone around starts praising the delinquent, he begins mocking his opponent, saying it was all too boring. During the fight, we see our protagonist and his friend observing everything, while Kim remains extremely nervous, saying it was frightening. Even with his opponent practically defeated, Sangbong wasn't satisfied and kicks the boy's head. He continues to kick the boy's face, saying losers shouldn't be arrogant. And after a long session of kicks, the young man, with his face practically disfigured, begins to apologize, saying they should stop there. Up to this point, Kim was completely frightened and nervous, asking how many teeth the boy had lost already. Sangbong squats down, approaching the completely beaten boy, and says that apology was his, so the boy shouldn't apologize as well. The bully says that since the guy got angry just because he broke his friend's finger, he would suffer the same fate, taking hold of the boy's wrist. He adds that he would do something to apologize for the finger, then grabs a fire extinguisher to break the boy's hand fingers. At that moment, our protagonist just couldn't believe the sight he was seeing because it was all too brutal. Later that night, after the whole fight, we see our protagonist with his hand on his head, crying, saying he couldn't win. He and Minche were sitting on a swing in a park, and the boy continued crying, saying he couldn't win. Desperate from the visions he saw, the boy doesn't stop screaming and saying he couldn't fight. However, the girl gets irritated, kicking the boy and telling him to stop complaining, calling him a loser again. With confidence in her gaze, the girl tells the boy to shut up and asserts that just 1 month would be enough. Not expecting to hear that from her, the boy is completely confused and asks what she was talking about. Minchi gets furious but repeats, affirming that the boy had heard correctly and you would be able to win against the bully in a month. While swinging, she asks if the boy wants to make the deal or not. Still nervous and scared, the boy starts thinking about everything that happened. While wondering if he could really defeat Jung Sangbom, he remembers what the boy did to him. Lee tells Kim to believe in her and that the boy hesitates too much. And in the midst of a beautiful full moon night, they agree to make this deal. But in his mind, the boy still doubts himself, not believing he could win against his opponent. Trembling completely, the boy affirms he wasn't sure even if the girl said it confidently. He was very afraid. And as he clenches his fists, the boy says that those who don't take risks don't win, and anyway, he was already a loser, and if he were defeated, it wouldn't change anything. Changing his stance and with determination, he tells the girl he's in. Then we jump straight to a month after that night they made the deal. In the classroom, students are chatting about exams as usual, and everyone goes about their lives. Sangbom continues tormenting our protagonist, going up to the boy and asking if he had studied because he was counting on him. Behind Kim, Lee watches the whole situation and realizes the young man was still hesitating. She takes the boy to the stairs and confronts him, asking if he was ready because they had already discussed that Kim was going to challenge Sangbom to a fight. But even after a month, the boy says he's still very scared and not sure if he can fight. The girl gets angry, calling him a coward and saying all this preparation was a waste. However, Kim retorts, stating that just thinking about fighting the bully made his mind blank. Seeing her appeals weren't working, the girl calls him an idiot and tells him to just follow because she'll handle everything. They then walk back to their classroom and the teacher arrives announcing she would give the exam and asking everyone to put away their things. The teacher begins, starting the exam and distributing the sheets, also stating cheating wasn't allowed and anyone caught would automatically get a 0. The exam had already been going on for a while and Minchi starts writing something on a small piece of paper. She starts rolling up the paper and spots Sangbom, who was her target. Quickly, before the teacher could notice, she tosses the paper onto his chair. The small paper lands perfectly on Sangbom's desk, and upon seeing it, he smiles slightly. Sangbom looks to his side, noticing our protagonist, and assumes he threw the paper. He compliments the boy, saying Kim was quick since the exam had only started 5 minutes ago. However, Jae-hyuk, seeing the glance, wonders why the delinquent was looking at him when he hadn't even started the test. Immediately, the bully unfolds the paper, but upon reading it, he notices something that deeply irritates him. Written, there was a curse word accompanied by an invitation to a fight. While the bully was thoroughly irritated reading that, the girl sees that her plan could succeed, and our protagonist has no idea what's happening. After all this situation, we go back a month to the beginning of Kim's preparation. We see the boy carrying Lee on his back as he climbs a long staircase. Unsatisfied with the whole situation, Jae-hyuk asks if that would really help in the fight against his opponent. With her strong personality, the girl taps the boy's head, ordering him to do it and to trust her. Unable to do anything or express himself, the boy simply agrees as they continue up the stairs. Near the top, she continues guiding him where to go while sweating from exhaustion. In another location, we see the boy in a plank position, serving as a seat for the girl, and the boy asks if that would help too. However, to Kim's surprise, Minchi replies no, saying she just wanted to use him as a chair. While the boy struggles to hold her on his back, the girl continues mistreating him and kicking his neck. And after all this training suffering, the two went to eat at a tteokbokki shop. Inside, Minchi said it was for our protagonist to eat since he was paying for the entire lunch. While eating a sausage, the girl explains that strength comes from body weight, so he should eat a lot and somehow gain 10 kilograms. Hearing that, our protagonist gets scared because 10 kilograms was a lot, and he asks how he could achieve that, and the girl says to eat, that he would gain weight. Irritated, the girl says it was already annoying to eat with the loser, and on top of that, she had to endure complaints, and the boy stays silent. After lunch, we see Minchi getting up and starting to leave, asking if he was coming too. After lunch, our protagonist again returns to carrying the girl on his back. The boy asks if she would also teach some fighting techniques or just run away, and she says yes, stating that an order will arrive soon. As they are about to reach Kim's house, the girl notices that her order has arrived and orders the young man to pick it up and take it to the rooftop. Up on the rooftop, we see the order consisted of various training equipment. Never having played sports before, the boy is impressed and asks what those things are, and the girl says it's equipment that will assist in their training. While stretching, Minchi informs that she had asked an old friend from her hometown to send those. Minchi explains that the girl who sent the equipment is that friend with big balloons who had offered herself to the protagonist. He remembers the moment she offered her friend to make him accept the deal. The boy begins to imagine what that girl would be like, feeling embarrassed, but he snaps back to reality and shakes his head, saying it wasn't the time. Lee says they'll start with the basics and teaches how a jab works, punching with her left hand. And then she teaches how a straight right works, punching with her right hand toward our protagonist, creating a gust of wind. She says those were the two basic punches called jab and straight, while our protagonist is impressed. Lee moves her hips and applies a low kick with her right leg, calling it a low kick. Minchi asks Kim to perform a jab, straight, and low kick several times. Finally, she says our protagonist should do that non-stop for 2 weeks because if he didn't want to, he could give up. The boy quickly responds that it was fine, having no problems doing it. The intense training session begins and the boy tries to execute the moves, but the girl notices he's terrible at it and tries to adjust. Seeing the boy was already adapting to the jab and straight, Lee asks Kim to do it while holding 2 weights in his hands, and the boy executes it, feeling immense exhaustion. So it went on for 2 weeks regardless of whether it was day or night. No matter what, he was punching the air. After a long training session, he was executing the punches again, but now without the weights, showing he was much faster at it. Watching, the girl notices he was improving a bit. She gathers some pads, placing them in his hands, and asks him to practice some kicks. For the rest of the day, the training continued with several blows audible on the pads. After a while, finally the end of 2 weeks arrived and our protagonist was in UFC gloves and in a combat stance. He finally executes the sequence the girl had mentioned, performing a jab, straight, and finally a quick kick. Seeing that, the girl congratulates him, saying he was finally getting the hang of it, and for a while, she almost thought of giving up because he was so bad at it. She also says she'll teach an attack called a charge. The protagonist is impressed and asks if that's like a sliding tackle in soccer, but she denies it. Lee explains that a charge is a move to push and knock someone down in a fight, so since he's a novice, just a few punches won't be enough against the bully. Minchi takes a combat stance and asks our protagonist to knock her down. Being a coward, the boy is a little shocked, questioning if he really should knock her down, and Lee replies yes. He judges wrongly, assuming that because he's a man, pushing the girl with all of his might would knock her down. However, upon touching the girl, he feels as if he's crashing into an indestructible stone wall. The young girl, without showing any reaction, asks what the boy is doing since he's so weak. But with his face against the girl's thighs, the boy feels somewhat embarrassed and shy, saying the situation was thrilling. While the boy is distracted in his thoughts, Lee takes advantage and lands a knee to Kim's face. He groans in pain, and the girl explains that if Kim performs the charge wrong, that's what will happen. She points to herself and says now it's her turn to try to knock him down, and the boy just confirms. The two get ready, so after taking an attack position, the girl says she would do it at that exact moment. She also informs Kim that Sangbong was stronger than him, so if he tries a simple charge, he won't be able to knock him down easily. With a smile on her face, she explains she will teach a special charge for the boy to succeed. And before our protagonist could react, he just sees his vision blur and his body falling to the ground. He explains that for the remaining 2 weeks of the month, he underwent even more rigorous training like doing planks with Lee on his back, or quickly climbing stairs while running with the girl on his back, even squatting while carrying Lee in his arms. He also practiced a lot of fighting, throwing punches and kicks with the girl holding pads. Not to mention, the boy also learned charges to knock down his opponent. And finally, he sparred with the girl, fighting in real situations with her and taking beatings several times. In one of these sparrings with the boy's punch, the girl realizes her hand had gotten hurt, and he had improved a lot compared to the first day. Even at sunset, they didn't rest and didn't stop training and fighting for even a minute. Also, our protagonist helped the girl with her studies whenever he could, greatly advancing her. And so, after all this, a month passed, and then we see the school of the boy and the girl. Minchi is asking the boy if he's ready, and even more nervous and sweating cold, the boy says he is. More nervous than ever, Kim asks the girl what she had written in the note because Sangbong was extremely angry. However, Minchi replies it was for the boy to mind his own business, and that it wasn't the time to worry about that. He then changes his expression, showing great focus, so the girl tells him to go. Calling him a loser once again, she asks him to win. Then we see the crowd forming again to watch the fight, and there in front the boy had just arrived. Sangbong's veins were bulging from his face as he smoked a cigarette, trying to calm down. Drawing strength from where he didn't have, the boy becomes confident and says he would do it while facing his opponent. So we go back to the night before the fight, and Minchi was smoking her coconut cigarette as usual. Beside her, Kim was nervous, completely sweaty, and trembling. Noticing the boy's demeanor, the girl asks if he doesn't want to smoke, and the boy replies that he's fine. Lee starts teasing Jae-hyuk, saying he's a loser, and just the thought of a fight makes him tremble, and the boy explains that since it's his first fight, he's a bit nervous. With his head down, the boy says that just thinking about fighting the bully makes him nervous. A little disappointed, the girl says he's a loser and asks him to take off his shirt, surprising the boy. However, without hesitation, he obeys the girl and quickly takes off his shirt, with Lee then asking him to flex his abs a bit. Even though he's quite skinny, he tries to show off some abs due to his training, and Minchi says his body is already looking much better. She says if the boy loses all this training because of foolishness, he would just be an idiot since both of them worked so hard. Minchi adds that he would only lose if he lost psychologically to himself, so she asks him to have confidence. With his head still down and a bit hesitant, Kim agrees with the girl, saying he'll try. While putting his shirt back on, the boy asks why the girl keeps calling him a loser because it's offensive to him. She gets irritated and tells him to shut up because he is a loser, and he should be grateful just for her talking to him. As she lays her head on her knees, she says if he wins, she'll call him by his name. Hearing that, Jae-hyuk swallows nervously but uses it as motivation to boost his confidence. Suddenly, she extends her arm holding a green lighter in her palm, and then asks the boy to take it. The boy is a bit confused by the girl's gift, but she replies that if he holds it in his hands, his punches will become stronger, and he accepts. Kim then takes the lighter from her palm and says he'll return it after winning, but Lee says there's no need, and she wants a new one. Seeing a strange name marked on the lighter, the boy asks where the girl got it, and she says she doesn't need to explain anything to him. Back in the present moment, he gulps nervously while staring at his opponent, holding the lighter tightly in his hand. Even trying to stay confident, the boy continues to be nervous, wondering how those bullies manage to stay calm before a fight. However, he remembers the girl saying to have a little confidence. With that memory in mind, he draws inspiration and tightens his grip on the lighter in his hands, believing he can win. He starts preparing, taking off his glasses and walking towards his opponent, thinking that if he loses the fight, he'll just be a loser again, as he always was. Kim stops walking and stands right in front of his opponent Sangmom, who just stares at him. Sangmom takes the cigarette out of his mouth and starts smiling, saying it's very funny and asks if our protagonist has lost his mind. The boy gets irritated and asserts that he's completely sane while staring at the guy. The delinquent starts laughing loudly while mocking the nerd alongside his friends. Kim admits to himself that he had talked a lot but was still nervous, and Sangmom tries to intimidate him, asking why he suddenly became so brave. The bully asks one of his friends to record because he's going to save that video under the name Ji-hyuk's beating. During this, Minchi is observing the whole situation from the audience, thinking that the loser must win this fight, otherwise he's screwed. Finally, Sangmom decides to fight, flicking his cigarette away, stating that it's going to be very fun. The bully's friends start cheering and praising him to win the fight quickly. The delinquent clenches his fists and asks how many punches our protagonist wants to take because he's going to hit him hard. While his assailant says that, Kim remembers the previous night when the girl explained that fighting was about finding the right moment. She adds that if our protagonist misses the right moment to strike, he can't win, so even if he's scared, he should do his best. The protagonist continues trembling and sweating, drenching his shirt, but for the last time because this was the moment to get revenge. Kim then says the bully should answer first, then asking how many punches he wants. Unexpectedly, our protagonist takes a fighting stance, stating he'll hit the bully 100 times more than he asks for. All the bullies in the area start laughing and mocking the poor nerd. Sangmom also smiles widely, saying the boy is very funny and asks if he's taken something. He seizes the opportunity and quickly starts punching the poor boy, asking where he learned to fight. Seeing the punch coming towards him, our protagonist is taken aback, saying it was just the beginning and he wasn't nervous anymore. And as the punch comes, the boy recalls Lee's teachings, believing he could dodge it. However, before he could retaliate, he's hit squarely in the face, blood streaming before he can react. With a bit of ketchup coming from his nose, the boy realizes his arm was much shorter compared to his opponent's. Instantly, Sangmom lands a cross on the poor boy, asking if he's back to normal after taking a punch. Immediately after, the bully lands another cross with his other hand, asking if the boy knows his place. He continues mocking our protagonist and then delivers a strong knee to the boy's chest. With all those blows, the young man spits saliva as he says it's not right. Using his left hand, the bully grabs Kim by the hair and with his right prepares to strike, saying he'll put the nerd in his place. While holding the boy's head, he continues to punch the boy's face several times. The audience around continues to mock and disbelieve the poor boy, starting to exalt the bully. One of the girls watching mocks our protagonist, saying he's boring and asking why the boy challenged Sangmom. Kim puts his hand at his nose to stem the bleeding, then says it's enough. With one of his hands, he tries to push his assailant away, asking him to stop and saying it's over. The poor nerd was in tears as he continued to plead for the delinquent to stop because he had already given up. The audience notices the nerd crying and continues to laugh and mock the poor boy. The protagonist keeps telling himself he couldn't do it and was very scared, then starts apologizing while Sangmom just stares at him. As an act of pity, the delinquent releases his opponent, saying they would stop there because he already felt sorry. However, surprising everyone, he then kicks Kim hard in the stomach, throwing him against the wall, saying he would never say such a thing. With Kim against the wall, Sangmom moves in and starts punching the boy repeatedly, saying he couldn't stop because it was too much fun. He tries to defend himself by raising his guard, but all he can do is cry. With his face dirty with tears and blood, the boy says that even with all the practice and training with Lee Min-chae, it was no use. He remembers all the times he fought against the girl and asserts that even after all the sparrings with Lee, it wasn't enough. The boy continues taking the blows without reacting, saying he was too scared to fight back. Then he remembers one of the girl's statements asking him if he knows what the most important thing in a fight is. The girl explains that the most important thing to sustain in a fight is mental strength. The young nerd wonders if he heard correctly, and the girl confirms, saying that if a person loses their mental strength, even if they are stronger physically, they will lose the fight. Hearing this, the nerd despairs because his mental strength was terrible, so if he would lose, which would make Minchi angry. She goes up to the boy, putting her finger on his chest and saying he needed to manage his mental strength well because if he broke in the middle of the fight, he would definitely end up being beaten up. With confidence in her eyes, she says she would teach the boy how to escape if that happened. Lee reaches his hands out to the boy, embracing him and saying that if this happened, he should do the same thing she was doing. Having never felt even a feminine touch, the boy becomes completely nervous and shy, seeing the girl clinging to him. Ignoring Kim's reaction, Lee explains that typically you would use a technique, but because he was too weak, she would teach him something else. We return to the current situation where Kim was being beaten with punches to his arms and belly. As he finishes his recollection, he closes his eyes slightly, saying he would do it even if he died, he would try. The boy mimics the girl's actions, embracing Sangbom and throwing himself at him. Seeing the boy's action, Sangbom starts laughing, asking what he was doing, while we see what the next step was. Then, after grabbing the boy, our protagonist bites his ear, tearing off a piece of it. Sangbom, taken aback by the unexpected blow, begins to groan in pain and shout loudly. While Minchu is teaching him this before the fight, the girl says that since it's a fight for life or death, you should focus only on winning. And the second step after that was to sidestep, and our protagonist does so, distancing himself a bit from his aggressor. Sangbom tries to stem the blood gushing from his ear with his hands while glaring at the nerd and cursing. Still crying, our protagonist doesn't lose his angry gaze and then starts running towards the delinquent. He finally throws a punch at the guy who couldn't react because he was worried about his ear injury. And immediately after, without delay, Kim lands a solid straight punch to the bully's face. With the sequence of blows he had just taken, Sangbom can't do anything but be pushed back by the punches. Everyone in the audience starts cheering upon realizing what had happened, and Minchu watches everything with a smile on her face. The young man shouts that they were just getting started and that he was going to beat up the delinquent a lot more while celebrating landing a punch. Despite the blows, Sangbom manages to stay on his feet, and while stemming the ketchup dripping from his nose, he curses our protagonist. Annoying, the bully asks the boy if he really had hit him, while the boy remains silent, thinking that he had. The boy notices that the delinquent was momentarily distracted and thinks he should use that technique. He remembers Minchi explaining that since he was a novice, a few punches wouldn't have an effect and he would need to use charges. The girl adds that Sangbom was bigger and stronger than the boy, so if he opted for simple attacks, he might not be able to defeat him. As she smiles malevolently, the girl states that she will teach the boy a special attack. Taking our protagonist by surprise, the boy can't see anything, only his vision becoming blurry and his body starting to fall. Minchi had advanced and was holding Kim's legs, but the secret of this technique was to shock her shoulder against the male organ of her opponent. Feeling immense pain in his reproductive organ, the boy lets out a scream of agony and despair, spitting saliva. She explains that the secret of this technique was to shock her shoulder with the opponent's groin, and slowly knocks the boy down. With such a powerful blow and no resistance at all, Kim falls to the ground, with Minchi on top of him. The boy was practically passing out from pain, informing that his whole body was hurting. Lee replies that it was because besides being hit, his body was thrown against the ground. Minchi adjusts her hair, concluding that that's why you don't even notice where the pain came from, and she had used this many times against heavier people. Still trying to regain himself, Kim questions if this kind of move wasn't dirty since it hits a sensitive part of the opponent, and the girl sighs. She gets irritated and yells at the boy, affirming that he wasn't in a martial arts tournament and shouldn't worry about such things because only victory mattered. Minchi also says that in martial arts like Kudo, a kick to the groin is allowed when there's a weight difference, so he should just do as she said. With a somewhat dejected look, the girl also says that the one fighting dirty wasn't the boy, but that delinquent who still bothered him just because he was stronger. Back to the current moment, Sangbom was complaining that besides his ear, his nose was now bleeding ketchup. At that moment, the boy notices that the bully was distracted, and seeing an opportunity, he uses the technique he had learned. As expected, Sangbom groans and screams in pain upon receiving the attack to his groin and panicking. However, before he could react, our protagonist knocks him down, slamming him against the wall, causing the boy to almost faint from the impact. Colliding with the wall also hits his head, and the boy remains practically motionless from the shock. The audience watching this realizes that the bully had hit his head and starts wondering if he hadn't been seriously injured. With his vision completely blurry and almost fainting, all Sangbom could see was the nerd he had tormented assaulting him. Taking out his anger and hatred, our protagonist continues to throw punches at the boy, who was practically unconscious, while cursing him. He doesn't stop, continuing to unleash attacks against his former aggressor, saying that he deserved it. Furious, Kim adds that Sangbom was nobody and therefore had no right to beat up other people. While hitting the bully, the boy continues to cry with anger, saying that he was nobody to try to intimidate him, and if it weren't for him, more tears would be flowing from his face. Then Kim adds that if it hadn't been for Sangbom, he could have had a normal school life. The people watching were completely shocked to see the person they had been rooting for being beaten up by a nerd. However, Minchi, seeing that the boy was losing his cool in his thoughts, asks him to calm down because the fight wasn't over yet. Sangbom finally reacts by putting his foot on our protagonist's belly and kicking him away. The nerd, caught off guard by the attack, suddenly curls up a bit due to the intense pain in his stomach. Taking advantage of the nerd's distraction, Sangbom moves in on him and locks in a guillotine chokehold since it's a jujitsu move. Even completely beaten down, Sangbom continues to curse the kid and asks if he had learned how to fight. Smiling demonically, Sangbom mentions that he had also learned a technique from a friend that was like a guillotine. The delinquent applies more pressure, causing our protagonist to choke more and says he was going to rest. Kim is in trouble and realizes he's about to black out while trying to alleviate the choke by pulling Sangbum's arm with his own hands. However, the bully doesn't give him any leeway and maintains his posture, pressing harder on the hold. The protagonist's eyes are practically rolled back, crying and searching for a way out of this. The boy sees a light in his path, looking at his hand and noticing the lighter Minche had given him to hold in his fist. He sees it as an opportunity. While his aggressor is suffocating him, the boy ignites the lighter on his shoulder, causing it to burn. Feeling the burn suddenly, the bully instantly releases his opponent, stating that it was very hot. Kim recovers, pulling in the air that was lacking from his body, and asserts that the fight wasn't over yet. Using what Minche had taught him to break Sangbum's posture and balance, the boy delivers a massive kick to the back of the bully's thigh. While kicking, the boy also remembers Lee teaching him how to take down an opponent once and for all. The girl says that the best place to hit an enemy is the chin. Lee comments that if you hit the chin with the right weight and balance, no matter the person's size, they will fall and faint. And the girl finishes by saying that whether it's Sangbum or anyone else, just one blow to the chin will be enough to defeat them. In the current moment, the protagonist notices an opening in his enemy's guard, seeing that his chin was exposed. Without any hesitation, the boy aims and immediately punches him there. Pouring out all the rage and hatred he held for months of suffering from the bully, the boy executes the punch. As expected, the blow lands squarely on his opponent's chin, making Sangbum instantly fall backwards. The bully's legs lose balance, and shortly after, the boy passes out, crashing against the ground immediately. All the other people and bullies watching the fight are silent, observing the unexpected turn of events. For a moment, Kim remains silent, trying to breathe and at the same time process everything that had happened. The boy looks at Sangbum, who is unconscious, drooling on the ground, completely knocked out. Some spectators start shouting that the fight was epic, while others still doubt that a loser like him had defeated a bully. The audience continues to cheer and celebrate, while Minchi seems somewhat proud, saying it was a tough victory. With a proud and approving smile, she says it was clear he would win because he had a great teacher, then turns and walks away. He is still a bit shocked and perplexed by everything that was happening. He also remembers one last thing Minchi had said, that when he won the fight, he should run, and so he does to avoid being ambushed by other bullies. Sangbum's group wonders if they should go after the boy, but one of them suggests they leave him. Without hesitation, the protagonist continues running for his life, fleeing from that place. As he continues running, the boy smiles and cries tears of joy, repeating to himself that he had won. Later, we see our protagonist explaining that the news of his victory over the bully had spread quickly. He thought his days of being a loser who was bullied were over, but he was wrong. We see an unknown person receiving the news that his subordinate had been defeated by a loser. This person who received the news was a chubby bully named Daebong, and the boy says that if he defeated this so-called loser, it would be 2 victories. Anyway, Daebong calls our hero to fight, and in the background, Minchi starts filming everything. Very nervous, the hero questions why he has to do this, as he believes violence is not the solution. However, the big guy doesn't care about the boy's opinion and slaps his face with great force. After attacking him, he says that reasons can always be created and insults the boy, calling him a useless piece of crap. Without wasting time, the big guy lifts the boy off the ground with his enormous arms, and throws him far away, making him crash into several chairs before falling to the ground, completely broken. He groans in pain from everything he's going through, and Daebong approaches, asking if the boy wants to fight now. However, the hero didn't know how he could defeat someone as big as him. At that moment, Kim was very scared, and because of this, the big guy took it as a sign of surrender, also believing he had defeated Sangbum as a bonus. So he smiles, thinking he killed 2 birds with 1 stone with such an easy and simple victory. Satisfied, the man left, saying he would see the hero later, and Kim wondered if this would be the end of his torment. The next day, however, the bullying was far from over, as Daebong walked through the room carrying our protagonist, who was only in his underwear. In this situation, Kim is very embarrassed and thinks that he never agreed to become a slave just because he refused to fight. Due to the embarrassing scene, some students start talking about the man who defeated Joe Sangbum. To humiliate the hero even more, Daebong picks up a spider from the floor and threatens to put it in his mouth. The boy tries to refuse, saying he's afraid of insects, but gets slapped hard across the face. Furious, Daebong asks if it looks like he's joking and orders the boy to just do what he's told. With that, he starts beating the hero while saying he's the boss of Busan and that there will be consequences if his orders aren't followed. Thus, the big guy's subordinates hold Kim's mouth open and the bully puts the insect inside. This makes Daebong laugh a lot, and he asks how the boy feels now that he's Spider-Man. In response, the protagonist cries and asks why they're doing this to him. Then Daebong explains that he's doing it because it's fun and to keep Sangbum under control. However, because the hero's reaction is so funny, the bully thinks it's cool to keep tormenting him. To him, losers like the boy don't need a reason to suffer at the hands of others. Therefore, Daebong tells the hero to think of this as the inevitable and cruel fate of a loser. That's why the bully orders Kim to start going to his room from the next day for a daily check-in. Finally, the boys leave while Daebong brags about his deeds and his subordinates praise him. After everything that happened, the bully tormenting him only changed. Nothing else really improved. Later, during his private lesson, Kim announces he's ready to begin. However, Minchi asks for some time to finish the conversation she's having with a close friend. With no other choice, Kim waits and remembers that after narrowly winning the fight, he thought the bullying would stop. But suddenly, a new, even worse bully appeared to torment his life. He remembers what the bully said but can't believe this is his fate. However, with his height and weight, the new bully is in a completely different league from Sangbam, making it unimaginable to beat him. Faced with this, the hero asks the girl if she thinks it's possible to defeat that filthy pig. Minchi thinks for a few seconds, then quickly shouts no and asks if the hero is mentally sound. This makes Kim even sadder than he already was, but the girl explains that in fact there is a way. This quickly cheers up the protagonist, who begins to see hope in his now chaotic life. Before telling him, the girl asks if the hero will be able to follow the plan, and he immediately says he's determined to try. Either way, she explains that this is not something just anyone can do, and they will need some equipment. First, Minchi makes a phone call, and the long wait starts to make Kim very anxious. To clear up any doubts, the girl explains that she's talking to her busty friend. But this makes Kim even more nervous because busty girls are his type, and he wonders if she might like him. On the phone, Minchi talks to Hong Sarah and asks if she's available to chat. Either way, she questions why it's so noisy on the other side of the line and asks if Sarah is drinking. The busty girl confirms, which makes Minchi jealous of her friend, who is drinking with handsome men. Getting straight to the main point, she explains that she'll need one more thing for the loser she mentioned earlier. Minchi then informs Sarah that she'll send all the details via WhatsApp again, without leaving any doubts. Before hanging up though, she asks if she should pass the phone to the loser for a minute. However, the hero doesn't want to take the line because he's too shy to hold a conversation with a girl. In this case, Minchi asks again, saying her friend wanting to meet him should be a compliment to the boy. Not wanting to spoil the mood, Kim, though embarrassed, answers, saying it's a pleasure to meet Sarah. In response, the girl laughs a lot, saying she heard about the hero being very weak, and by his voice, that seems to be true. After the introductions, she feels like throwing up, and on the other side of the line, someone tells her to be careful not to spill on the phone. Finally, the call ends, and when asked by Minchi about how it went, Kim says nothing much happened. In reality, the call had been a mess, and later, out of curiosity, the hero asked what the girl had requested from her friend. Without delay, a box is placed on the ground, and Minchi explains, inside this box is the key to the boy's victory. As soon as he opens it, he sees something different inside, but he's a bit confused about how it could help. 3 weeks later, Kim meets the bully who was attacking him, ready to get his revenge. With a cigarette in his mouth, Daebong asks if the boy really intends to fight him, but suddenly, he notices something much more interesting and strange about the boy. Quickly, he asks what those things are that Kim is carrying with him. That's because the hero is wearing 2 enormous gloves, which to the bully are just trash like the boy himself. Along with Daebong, all the students start mocking the boy for the idea of bringing such weird gloves. Mockingly, Daebong asks if the boy thinks this is a comedy show, playing around like this. However, Kim ignores the provocations and gets into a fighting stance, ready to finally take his revenge. This is because he remembers Minchi telling him that this would be the only way to beat the bully in front of him. 3 weeks earlier, the hero opened the box and found that pair of giant gloves. Quickly, he asked what they were and questioned if giant gloves were really the solution to his problems. In response, Minchi told Kim to put them on, and after wearing them, the hero was still uncomfortable with how big they were. In this case, the girl got very irritated for being questioned, but the hero couldn't help it, as he thought he was being pranked again. Either way, Minchi called the boy over to start training. The first thing the hero had to do was block the iron rod with the giant gloves. Seeing this, Kim panicked because he didn't think he could block it, no matter how big the gloves were. With that, Minchi explained that the force behind someone's punch as big as Daebong would be as strong as the impact of the rod, so Kim needed to be able to block it. Without delay, the training began, and with a good step forward, Minchi adjusted her stance and delivered a powerful strike to the gloves. That blow sent the protagonist flying, unable to do anything. This made the girl furious because the boy should have kept his stance to avoid being thrown and thus be able to defeat the bully. Realizing that Kim was weaker than she thought, she decided to implement an intense lower body training routine. Thus, the hellish training began with exercises like walking squatted down to school, or even sitting through an entire class in an invisible chair to strengthen his thighs. This isometric position had to be maintained even during meal times in the school cafeteria. Throughout all this suffering, Minchi watched from a distance, giving some instructions but keeping as far away as possible. It was said that even when the boy was in the bathroom, he maintained the isometric invisible chair. And when the girl wanted to smoke, he became her chair for her usual break. From time to time, Minchi would tease him, asking if Kim enjoyed feeling her backside. And this, of course, made the boy panic because he was very shy, which led to some uncomfortable moments. 2 weeks after that, the girl prepared for the same attack with the iron rod. However, even after attacking with all her strength, the boy didn't move an inch backward. The moment the girl realized this, she decided to strike a few more times with even greater intensity. but now the boy was able to withstand all the attacks without much difficulty. So she said that if Kim could survive these attacks, his chances in the fight would already be around 90%. Back to the present, the boy is facing his enemy and ready for what's to come. Daebong, for his part, recalls that the boy had asked for a fight and asks if he's ready to get beaten. Without delay, he prepares an attack, saying that Kim will die for trying to act tough. The hero braces for the impact and inevitably receives it with all the strength the bully has. However, even though it was a blow stronger than Minchi's, he amazingly manages to withstand it. This scene starts to get the students excited, and little by little, they realize that this was no joke. Unable to believe it, Daebong remains confused because in his mind, the boy should have been thrown far away. Despite everything, Minchi watches from a distance, cheering for the boy she still considers a loser. With that, the bully punches the gloves several more times while screaming in anger. He recalls that the boy dared to challenge him and says the hero won't be able to last much longer. Kim was taking many hits, but all of this was part of the plan to rile up the bully. At this moment, what the protagonist wanted most was to heighten the emotions and bring out all of Daebong's feelings. This is because, some time ago, Minchi said something very important to the boy. She said that Daebong used to fight in his gym with guys very similar to him, and they all had the characteristic of getting tired quickly. Therefore, in a logical estimate, Kim would need to hold out for about 30 seconds. Thus, the boy's life now depended on him enduring as much as possible until the bully got tired. And indeed, when the 30 seconds were up, Daebong could no longer throw a punch. Frustrated, he asks how the boy dares to provoke him and questions what the boy's plan is if all he does is block. With that, Kim remembers what Minchi said about fatigue and understands that it's his time to act. He then moves forward and delivers a powerful headbutt from below, hitting the bully's chin. This follows exactly what the girl had planned for his battle against Daebong. In the past, Minchi told the hero that a hit to the jaw with enough force would defeat anyone. So all the hero needed to do was land the hit and claim his victory. Back to the present, it was indeed working because the bully's eyes started rolling back. However, not everything went as planned, and Daebong ended up falling on top of our hero, pinning him to the ground. Unfortunately, just a few seconds after the hit, the bully woke up from the knockout but now was lying on top of Kim. He becomes very angry about what happened and is already preparing to get his revenge. And all of this happened just as the girl had predicted because she said that if Kim didn't win with the hit, he would surely lose. That's why the hero realizes he's in trouble and starts crying with no hope of improvement. Faced with this, some students start laughing while Minchi shows a bit of concern. Daebong, for his part, warns the boy that he's in deep trouble, and at this point, the only thing left is for him to get beaten. With this, many of the students agree and get excited to witness the beating the boy is about to take. However, at this moment, someone appears asking to pass through, irritating some of the students. One of them explains that since the boy arrived late, he should watch the fight from afar. However, he says he's a second-year student and asks to watch the fight with them because he's really bored. This is Han Philip, 18 years old, and with him is John Daniel, the same age, who doesn't understand the appeal of these fights. Since they realize they were dealing with seniors, the juniors step aside, and Philip thanks them for their understanding. When they reach the central area, Philip manages to see the fight but asks if it's already over since one of them is already on top of the other. In this case, Philip comments that they should have arrived earlier, and Minchi finds it strange to see English students at her school. Anyway, the foreigner notices that something different is about to happen in the fight. This is because Daebong has his fists raised, ready to finish off the hero. First, he orders the protagonist to prepare to be beaten to death. He then lands the first punch, making Kim's nose start to bleed. He follows up with more punches, warning that it's too late to beg for mercy. Seeing this, Philip gets a little scared because the hero is being hit with such brutality that it could really kill him. However, Minchi remains silent as she still believes in the boy's potential to get back up. She keeps hoping that Kim will do something to defend himself and get out of this mess. However, the hero continues to take more punches, and at one point, he nearly loses consciousness. Meanwhile, in the past, Kim had looked at something on his phone and called for Lee Min-chae. While watching an MMA fight, he asked her what he should do if he ended up underneath someone in a fight. He commented that it seemed difficult even for professional fighters. In response, the girl explained that there wasn't much that could be done because Daebong weighs over 100 kilograms. Therefore, it was unlikely that the boy could get out of such a position, so he should avoid it as much as possible. Nevertheless, Kim still wanted to learn something, and there was a way in jiu-jitsu, although it was a complicated method. So he asked to be taught, and Minchi decided to help him even though she wasn't really in the mood. Inevitably, the two had to get close to practice jiu-jitsu, and this made Kim very embarrassed because of his overly perverted mind. In any case, she explained in detail what to do to escape a situation like that. Back in the present, Daebong continues to land countless blows on the hero, not giving him a moment to rest. While beating him, he says that it's all the boy's fault because he gave up his easy life to face him. Then Daebong declares that this world is a place where only the fittest survive, and for him, being beaten is and always will be the fate of a loser like Kim. This statement made the hero start to remember everything he had suffered for being treated as a loser at school, and suddenly, all his anguish and fear turned into immeasurable rage. Minche, on her part, had explained in detail all the steps to escape this mess. First, it was necessary to bend one leg and then turn to form a barrier with the shoulder. Then, when one knee was raised, it caused the opponent to lose balance. Next, the hips should be pushed into the empty space, and by doing everything he had been taught, Kim managed to escape. Without wasting time, our hero gets up and enters a defensive stance with his enormous red gloves. Seizing the opportunity, he moves forward and lands an uppercut right in the middle of Daebong's face. From a distance, the students are amazed that the boy is managing to fight back with such huge gloves. Philip, on the other hand, is very excited by how the fight is unfolding. The students had thought the boy was someone who only blocked, and now they wonder if attacks like that really hurt. In the end, what Minchi said made sense because she had stated that the only way to win was by using his head. That's why the attacks with the gloves were just to buy time and create an opening. However, even though it was a simple distraction, Kim was still giving his all. Incredibly, his attacks managed to make Daebong's nose start to bleed. From a distance, Philip gets excited by the damage that those awkward gloves are managing to cause. However, at this moment, Kim starts making some strange movements as if trying to draw attention. Obviously, something like that in a fight like this made the students in the audience burst into laughter. But in the midst of these movements, Daebong found an opening to grab the gloves. And promptly, he turned the tables by snatching Kim's most valuable possessions from his hands. Suddenly, everything begins to go against Minchi's plan, and after taking the gloves, the bully puts them on. In the end, Kim is completely terrified because he already knows he has no more chances of winning. At this moment, the hero is in deep trouble, but still tries to defend himself from the blow that is about to come. Obviously, the impact is too much for Kim to withstand, and he is sent flying backward. Philip, on the other hand, laughs a lot the boy's naivety in believing he could block. After rolling around a lot, the boy stops on the other side of the field, very close to the students in the audience. Lying on the ground, Kim thinks this is all crazy because with a slightly stronger punch, his life could have ended. After recovering, Kim looks up and unfortunately sees a girl accusing him of looking at her private parts. Faced with this, the boy stands up and apologizes, while the senior encourages him to keep fighting. Regardless, the hero believes he can still fight and win if he thinks calmly. From a distance, Daniel comments that, in his opinion, the kid will fight better without the gloves. Philip doesn't understand what his friend means, and neither does Minche, who thinks both of them are delusional. In any case, Daebong still finds it incredible that a little rat like his lackey could carry such heavy gloves. Changing the subject, he excitedly declares that the gloves suit him better than they did Kim. In this case, he calls the protagonist to fight, and as he approaches, the hero tries to calm himself, having to fight barehanded. However, while warming up, he notices something very different about his fists. This something different was that his punches were much faster than before. This was something Minchi had already predicted, considering the results of their training. The hero didn't know it yet, but those gloves weighed 5 kilograms each for a total of 10 kilograms combined. In contrast, the dumbbells used during practice for the fight with Sangbom weighed only 2 kilograms each. Unknowingly, Kim had been doing his sparring training with Minche with an extra 5 kilograms on each hand. Now, this was the moment to witness all of the loser's evolution in a direct confrontation. Due to his arrogant nature, the bully is the first to attack, bragging about the victory he's going to have. Faced with this, Kim realizes that blocking will be impossible, so he thinks he should dodge. Incredibly for our hero, he manages to dodge with ease because the gloves are also slowing down the bully. With this, the hero decides to attack once again, and apparently, his punches are working. Witnessing everything, Philip becomes even more excited about the boy's performance and encourages him to go even faster. However, the bully shows no signs of being hurt and says that the punches aren't doing any damage. But regardless, due to Daebong's punches getting slower, Kim dodges again and lands a few more punches. When Daebong is hit, he recalls that he's not feeling any pain from them. Thus, the senior understands that even though the punches are incredibly fast, they're still not causing any real damage. Daniel explains that this is due to the difference in weight, so unless the boy balances things out somehow, he won't be able to win. Weeks ago, Minchu warned that if the giant gloves were no longer useful, the boy should fight barehanded. However, since the bully's body is covered in a layer of fat, he wouldn't feel the punches, so Kim asked what he should do. In this case, Minchi advised that the hero should aim for areas where the layer of fat is thinner, the target being the bully's knee, and at that moment, Kim remembered everything he had learned. Without wasting time, he went for Daebong and landed a kick on his knee, causing a nerve shock in the bully. With that, Philip quickly noticed and praised the protagonist's strategy of targeting the most vital spots. Meanwhile, the bully isn't impressed by the kick he took and says it only tickled. In any case, he tries to land another attack, but the protagonist dodges again with his incredible agility. Gradually, Daebong becomes more and more tired and exhausted, and as a result, his punches become slower. Eventually, the moment comes when the big guy can't dodge anything anymore, and Kim is able to take control of the battle with ease. With his stamina at its peak, the hero manages to land a few punches and kicks to the knee during moments of opportunity. Even though Daebong is trying to fight back, he can't accept that someone so small and fast is winning. As a result, more and more kicks hit the bully's knee, and little by little, the damage accumulates. After many kicks, a significant wound develops, noticed by the students in the audience. With one of his legs almost completely incapacitated, the bully takes action. He removes the gloves, finally realizing they were hindering him, while the hero begins to think of his next plan. He remembers that Minchi advised him that at this moment, just threatening a kick would make Daebong scared and try to defend himself. Since everything he's been taught so far has worked, Kim follows this plan as well. Inevitably, Daebong lowers himself to defend his already badly injured knee. At the same time, the hero remembers the spot he should target when an opening appears, precisely the place where there isn't much fat accumulation on the body, the stomach, the solar plexus. Without wasting time, the protagonist seizes the chance to end the fight and strikes the bully with all of his strength. For the first time, Daebong feels the taste of a possible defeat at the hands of someone so small and fragile. And now, after the blow to the solar plexus, it's time to hit the spot that can knock someone out. This spot is none other than the jaw, and Kim recalls the demonstration the girl showed earlier. He reproduces it the same way, landing a powerful knee to Daebong's jaw, even denting his chin. Inevitably, Daebong collapses to the ground unconscious, right at Kim's feet, leaving him very surprised. After reflecting for a moment, the hero finally realizes that after much effort, he managed to defeat the big guy. From a distance, the students are impressed with the outcome of the fight and the knockout demonstrated by the small boy. Meanwhile, Minchi is filled with concern because her favorite loser almost lost again. But regardless, she walks away, thinking that the boy still has a long way to go. As the fight ends, Philip comments that the victorious boy looks like an elementary school student and finds it very amusing. He also pats Daniel on the back and says he's glad they postponed their meeting. However, Daniel simply closes his book and walks away, saying that his friend's problem is being too carefree. In the background, a man with strange hair silently observes everything that's happening. He watches all the students' comments about the fight with a calm and calculating demeanor. In the end, he shows some unease toward that loser, as he still believes it was all just a fluke. Kim, for his part, thinks that after a fight like this, the only thing left to do is to run away as quickly as possible so that other bullies won't try to attack him. From the top of a wall, a group of nerds is present like a fan club, feeling represented by the boy. They ask if the hero can hear them and praise him, comparing him to the protagonist of an anime and the Knight of the Kingdom of Losers. Amid the commotion, in the background, a peculiar girl is observing everything. She begins to reflect on everything that happened, recalling how an intimidated boy managed to beat his bully. Because of this, Youngmin starts to develop some romantic feelings for Kim, as she thought it was amazing. Elsewhere, a conversation is overheard from inside the gym's storage room. Many bullies are talking about the previous night, which have been a lot of fun. Among them, one asks if his friend had sold all his quota and is told no, as the police were nearby. Another delinquent invites a red-haired girl to go drinking with him later, and she promptly accepts. The conversation continues to unfold normally, and this group is known as the Invincible Bully Union. At some point, the delinquents recall that the president is taking a long time to return and complain about it. However, just as they mention it, the door to the storage room opens to reveal a new arrival. Upon entering and settling in, the president of the Invincible Bully Union apologizes for being late. This is the senior from earlier and the number one of the Invincible, Han Philip. Of course, alongside him is his longtime colleague and number two, Jung Daniel. To explain his delay, the leader says he stopped along the way because there was something entertaining to watch. Upon hearing this, one of the delinquents remembers hearing about a promising freshman and asks if the boss went to check him out. However, the freshman the student was talking about wasn't the hero but Daebong. So Philip explained that Daebong wasn't good because he lost to a certain someone. At this point, the delinquent remarks that they should pay attention to the guy who won the duel. When asked if the winner was someone good, Philip couldn't be sure. But he said all he knew was that it was very funny to watch. Regardless, the blonde student reminds them that they need to start recruiting freshmen and asks if he should go check things out himself. In response, Philip asked his companion to wait a little longer so they could see if the boy would demonstrate even greater potential. A few days after the fight between the hero and his bully, the protagonist met with Minchi again. While she was solving some math problems, Kim gathered the courage to ask her something. There was something the protagonist still wanted to consult with his colleague about, so she was willing to listen. It had been 3 days since Kim won his fight against Hong Daebong, but some mysterious student had recorded the entire fight and posted the video on the SNS social media platform. Now the whole school knows about our hero, and many people approach him throughout the day. Even students from other schools watched the video and started approaching him on the street. Moreover, some bullies are trying to pick fights with the boy to boost their own status, bumping into him several times a day. Faced with this, the hero asks what he should do because all this attention is condemning him. In this case, Minchi asks if the boy doesn't know that the winner always gets all the honor and attention. However, Kim says he doesn't want all this attention, recalling that people around him continue to fight with him. Soki asks why the torment never ends, even after his victory. Inevitably, the girl responds that it's because the boy still looks like a loser. Kim was surprised by this as he had thought he'd improved, but Minche completely disagreed and even mocked him. In this case, a protagonist asks what he should do to stop looking like a loser. Minche explains that the hero must become stronger so that no one dares to mess with him anymore. Kim understands the concept, and the girl reiterates, saying that the boy needs to get strong enough that everyone respects him. That's why Minche advises Kim to fight the next time someone tries to start trouble with him. But she says the hero shouldn't just fight, he should win in a one-sided manner. Faced with this, Kim realizes what his path will be now, though he's still a bit apprehensive about having to keep fighting. However, he understands that this is inevitable and wonders who he'll have to fight next. Later, on another day, the boy with strange hair shows up in the school corridors. He introduces himself as Hansel and strikes a pose that makes him look even weirder. But in any case, Kim still doesn't know who this guy in front of him is or what he wants. On another day, this same guy was driving a Mercedes-Benz while smoking a cigarette. A friend of his asked where he got the car, and Hansel explained that he took it from his dad while he was sleeping. Because of this, his friend was impressed that his father owned a Mercedes, and Hansel explained that it was the result of a long debt. Regardless, the boy told his friend to be careful because he was about to speed up. Without delay, he put his foot on the accelerator and sped down the road at high speed. At that moment, the bully's friend praised his driving skills, which were getting better and better. In any case, he asked where Yaman was as he was the only one who managed to transfer to that scary school. In response, Hansel claimed that he also knew how to fight and recalled that he was number 2 at Goemyeon Middle. Then the boy replied, saying that his friend only became number 2 by staying close to the number 1, never having actually fought. That statement obviously touched Hansel's pride and made him very angry. So he asked his friend to stop saying things like that because it was all a strategy for managing relationships. Moreover, to Hansel, losers recognize each other, and that's why he just needs to show others that he's a predator. In this case, his friend asked how the bully planned to put that into practice. Hansel replied that he just needed to find an herbivore and eat him alive. Hansel's friend, however, didn't understand the analogy, so the boy had to explain that he was talking about some random loser. But of course, he wouldn't go after just any loser. He'd find the most nutritious one available, one that would boost his reputation and spread his fame as a dangerous predator throughout the school. Regardless, the boy in the passenger seat questioned how Hansel would do that if he'd never even fought. Then the bully explained that he had done a few years of boxing, and when asked if there were still any losers in the school, he replied yes, recalling that even so, this one had managed to defeat the notorious Sangbom and Han Daebon from Busan. Hansel still didn't understand the danger that Kim posed and believed he was making a smart move by challenging him to gain fame. So the next day, the bully found the hero and quickly headed towards him. Upon seeing Kim in front of him, Hansel was very happy because he would finally be able to establish his hierarchy at the school. He approached and introduced himself to the protagonist, just as expected, with his name and his strange gesture. To break the ice, Hansel explained that he was a student from class 6 and wasn't bothered by the fact that the hero didn't know him. He soon clarified that he didn't have any friends yet and asked if our hero would be his first. Kim quickly accepted, though we thought the man's face seemed very familiar. Then the hero remembered that this was the same boy who had tried to intimidate him after his victory against Sangbom. He recalled that on that day, Hansel had mocked him, saying his victory was just a fluke. It became clear that this student was the same guy from before, but now he was showing a sudden change in attitude. Hansel then honestly commented that he was impressed by the fight a few days ago. To explain himself, he said he loved movies and compared the boy's behavior to what he saw on TV. In the end, Hansel described the entire fight as something really cool and surprising. However, Kim wasn't expecting such sudden praise from a stranger. So Hansel reiterated his statement and asked if the hero wasn't someone who received compliments often. In response, Kim explained that this was the first time, as before, the only compliments he ever heard came from his mother. Thus, he thought it was very exciting to have his efforts recognized, and Hansel asked for the hero's name again. Without delay, the protagonist introduced himself with his full name, and Hansel extended his hand to seal their friendship. Kim shook his hand immediately, though he felt a little embarrassed by the situation. Despite not having made friends for a long time, he believed this person might have a good heart. And having resolved his personal matters, Hansel politely said goodbye and left the place, which Kim cheerfully reciprocated. After leaving, Hansel was laughing inside because the boy had completely fallen for his act. Even though he had made Kim think they were friends, the bully's plan was to lure him in slowly until the right moment to strike. Later, back at Minchi's house, the boy asked if his classmate could understand the formula written on the board. He explained that after mastering it, she would be practically working at an elementary level. So the hero asked if they could start solving all the checked questions in the workbook. Minchi did her best to understand the material, even though she was already very tired. Meanwhile, all Kim could think about was the day that had just passed. That's because this had been the first time he received a compliment that didn't come from his own mother. That boy even said they should be friends, and this was something Kim hadn't heard in a long time. At this moment, the hero barely remembered what true friendship was, so he decided to ask Minche. At first, she didn't understand the question, so she asked her tutor to stop distracting her while she was focused. She quickly returned to her studies and Kim just stood there without any comforting answer. Changing the subject, he recalled that he rarely saw the girl with friends at school and asked why that was. In response, Minche explained that she had come to Seoul alone to study and had no intention of spending her time on friends. She then remembered that she already had many friends in her hometown and didn't see the need to make more in Seoul. However, when the subject of friendship came up, Minche remembered that her friend was supposed to come by today. Kim didn't understand what she meant, so the girl clarified that her friend was coming. It was the same busty friend she had mentioned earlier. This information hit Kim like a shockwave through his body and soon the doorbell rang. Seeing this, the hero became very anxious and questioned the girl's sudden visit, even though he had already been informed. In any case, Minche didn't dwell on the drama and told the boy to go greet her friend. Excitedly, the hero rushed to the door, and without hesitation, he turned the doorknob. At this moment, all his anxieties began to surface because, more than anything, the boy was a bit of a pervert. Then, as the door opened, the girl said hi, which was enough to make the hero blush. With her first words upon entering her friend's house, Sarah excitedly said it was a pleasure to meet the boy who had been talked about so much. As she entered, she noticed the height difference between them and asked if it was true that Kim was a loser, as she had heard. In response, the hero found the girl's attitude rather rude, especially given how loud she was. Without delay, Minche appeared to greet her friend, while Kim covered his ears to keep his sanity intact. Quickly, Sarah jumped into Minche's arms and made a comment about her chest, saying they seemed bigger than before. She asked if her friend had a boyfriend, as they say breasts grow when someone's in love. Either way, Minche mentioned that she knew a place that sold boneless chicken feet, and Sarah agreed to eat that. Next, Minche introduced our hero to her friends, saying he was the loser from earlier. She added that Kim really liked big things, which is why he always got excited when someone with those characteristics appeared. In response, Sarah placed her hands on her chest to make it appear bigger and asked if the hero wanted to squeeze them. This, of course, made the protagonist turn red with embarrassment, leaving him completely speechless. Seeing this, Sarah laughed a lot at his reaction and explained that she never actually intended to let him touch her. However, she still grabbed Kim for at least a hug, which was more than enough for him. But the girl didn't stop at the hug and soon threw the hero to the ground in a jiu-jitsu position. With an arm triangle choke locked in, the girl was perplexed that the boy couldn't escape. Now in complete panic, Kim begged to be let go as he was starting to run out of air. However, Sarah didn't hear his pleas and the hero's vision gradually darkened until he passed out completely. Later, Minche started stepping on Kim to wake him up, which inevitably worked. When he opened his eyes, the hero was in a panic, not understanding why he was on the floor. In this case, Minche explained that Kim had fainted from the hold, and that he now had to use his card to pay for the chicken feet. Despite disagreeing, the hero eventually accepted the terms so he could be paid back later, and everyone started eating. Before anything else, the protagonist decided to ask when his mother would return. Minche reminded him that his mother had gone to a 2-night, 3-day workshop. Before she left, all she said was for the two of them to have a lot of fun together. Although the information wasn't delivered in a bad way, the hero felt quite sad that he hadn't even been informed by his own mother. But Sarah didn't let the mood drop as she quickly pulled out a large amount of soju from her bag to accompany the meal. Faced with this, the hero was obviously shocked, so Minche told him to shut up and keep his secret. Naturally, the two girls started drinking non-stop while the protagonist observed them from a distance. After the first sip, Minche commented that it tasted great, but the hero still found it crazy to drink alcohol while underage. However, the two continued without any concerns, and after a few hours, the situation changed. This was because after drinking a lot, both girls passed out from the effects of the alcohol. To try to manage the mess, the hero told them to move to the bed so they could sleep more comfortably. However, Minche asked to be lifted and put in bed, which Kim, surprisingly, didn't argue about. He quickly placed her on the bed, but suddenly, someone appeared behind him. It was Sarah, who also fell, this time onto the boy's shoulders, as he was now responsible for taking care of both of them. As a result, Kim ended up in a rather awkward position, right between the two girls, which was embarrassing but also quite favorable. Now the hero was stuck between two beautiful girls, and being shy, he couldn't help but wonder how he ended up in this situation. He couldn't escape because Sarah was holding onto him too tightly. Still, he decided to flee the moment the girl loosened her grip a little. But whether by luck or misfortune, Minche also leaned some of her weight onto our hero, making it impossible for him to escape now. Later the next day, Kim ends up being the last to wake up and is woken up by the girls. Minche is the first to ask why the hero slept that way next to them. Kim becomes very embarrassed and apologizes, explaining that he fell asleep by accident. However, Sarah still thinks the boy is a pervert, but says she would have accepted it if he had asked in advance. In any case, the three resolve the situation and soon go to have some ramen that Kim bought for lunch. Changing the subject, Sarah mentions that she heard the boy had learned martial arts, so she suggests a sparring match with him. Minche asks if that's what the boy wants and explains that Sarah is great at martial arts, having trained at the same gyms as her. Since the hero hadn't fought anyone other than Minche, he decides to accept the challenge. At this moment, he understands that he should train with someone else to better evaluate his skills. Later, the two head to the rooftop to have the match as properly as possible. Kim quickly raises his guard and finds it strange that his opponent isn't getting into a fighting stance. Sarah then approaches him in a very sweet manner, touches the hero's hand, and asks him not to hurt her. This throws Kim off, and she uses that exact moment to hit him with all her strength. The protagonist takes the hit directly and falls to the ground, unable to defend himself. Sarah uses this as a lesson, advising Kim to keep his instincts sharp in a fight. After taking the hit, the hero feels that approach was very inappropriate and complains a lot. However, Minchi agrees with her friend's actions and reminds him that in a fight, paying attention is the most important thing. Anyway, Sarah extends her hands and invites the boy to attack with all he's got. Kim feels a bit frustrated at being underestimated but starts paying more attention to the girl's stance. The hero had no idea why her hands were extended like that, so he decided to start with a punch. Quickly, Kim does what he knows best. He throws his fast punch, but it's stopped with a simple hand gesture. Kim realizes this isn't something he's used to seeing and begins to doubt the speed of his punch. He decides to try again, this time with even more speed, but once again, his punches are blocked with just one hand. The hero can't believe it, but all his attacks are being blocked with ease. Seeing this, the girl comments that it really has to do with the boy's speed. Nevertheless, the protagonist realizes that he's too far away to attack effectively. He understands that he'll have to get closer and use the traditional 1-2 boxing style. So he prepares to throw his punches, whether they're blocked or not, betting on his strength. Without delay, the hero throws his final punch, the strongest one, but Sarah counters with her own punch. Unlike the hero's strike, hers lands perfectly, causing significant damage. Kim is knocked out by the punch and is once again woken up by a girl's foot poking him. Incredibly, when he opens his eyes, he finds Sarah's toes in his nose. The hero is stunned by the situation and the girls start laughing uncontrollably. Kim asks her what she's doing, but Sarah just mocks the situation and keeps laughing. Due to the boy's quick recovery, the two can now return to the fight without any major issues. Before returning, the hero reflects on the last match and tries to figure out what went wrong. First, Minchi catches her colleague's attention, pointing out that he still hasn't noticed Sarah's stance. She explains that Sarah's right hand and right foot are forward, unlike Kim's. That's because in a fight, he usually keeps his dominant hand and foot back. This stance means that the girl is actually left-handed, making her a southpaw. Kim is impressed that Minchi can spell that word, which leaves her a bit embarrassed. Returning to the main topic, she reminds him that during the fight, it was clear that Sarah was maintaining a greater distance. It was explained that when right-handed fighters face off, their dominant hands and feet are opposite. This allows them to get closer and reduce the attack distance. But when facing a left-handed opponent, the dominant feet are aligned. I believe that in these cases, it's usually necessary to fight for the dominant foot position to close the distance. In any case, left-handers take advantage of the longer distance, which is why left-handed fighters have an advantage over right-handers. During the fight, Sarah continued blocking attacks with her dominant hand and kept retreating. In the end, that's why the distance between the two seemed to keep growing. Frustrated, the hero tried to close the gap as quickly as possible to land an attack. However, it was exactly that movement that gave the girl an opening to counterattack with a straight left punch. Left-handers typically use a counterattacking style aiming to finish the fight with a big strike. Even though left-handed opponents are rare to find, fighting Sarah could still be beneficial. Seeing this, the hero understood everything about the opponent he was facing and recognized the difference between Sarah and Minchi. But before Kim could even prepare, the girl had already grabbed his hand and punched him in the face. With a smile, she said that this fight would be a big help for the protagonist in his future battles. Soon, Kim took more and more punches, making him wish for it all to end as quickly as possible. However, Sarah wasn't someone who would let her opponent rest, and for a while, the hero's life became a nightmare. A few days later in the school corridors, the bully who had tried to manipulate the protagonist was walking around casually. During his walk, he spotted his fake friend and got excited, thinking he was in luck. Suddenly, Kim sensed something about to hit him and went on high alert. But Hensel appeared at the last second to save the hero from the ball he had thrown himself. To start a conversation, he apologized, saying he thought Kim was the new student in his class. The hero took it as an accident and said it was okay. This made Hensel even more confident, as Kim's submissive demeanor was still evident. To make sure, Hensel asked again if everything was really fine, and the hero confirmed, saying everyone makes mistakes. Because of this, the bully began to see the protagonist more and more as a miserable loser. But to justify his apology, he handed Kim a pack of candy, even though the hero didn't want it. The hero thanked him, and before leaving, Hensel suggested that they go to a Alien house together one day. He offered to pay, and even though the hero said it wasn't necessary, the bully insisted. All that kindness, however, was part of an act to start mistreating the boy later. After leaving, Hensel encountered the first-year students known as the Three Big Shots. These three delinquents were already well known in the local high schools, so Hensel believed that getting close to them could help him maintain his image. He figured it was time to show off his social skills and quickly inserted himself into their conversation. One of the students asked who the boy was, and Hensel introduced himself with a smile, saying he was a student from the neighboring class. In any case, another of them grew curious about Hensel's face, but he managed to steer the conversation away by inviting them to smoke. Quickly, the bully led the three delinquents to the recycling area, showing off his social skills. On the way, one of the students commented about the person who defeated Daebong and mentioned that he was now famous. Upon hearing this, Hensel remembered that the one responsible for that was none other than Kim. So he approached, realizing that the two were curious about his classmate and the delinquents were eager to listen. When asked if he knew the boy well, Hensel claimed that Kim was like an errand boy for him and said he had been the one who taught him how to fight. In any case, the bully explained that lately, his lackey had been getting too arrogant, so he planned to put him back in his place soon. Later at school, the bell rang and all the students headed to the cafeteria for lunch. While the delinquents searched for a place to sit, they talked about their latest exploits. But suddenly, someone caught their eye and grabbed the boys' attention. That person was the very one who had defeated Daebong and Sangbom in direct confrontation. In this case, one of the delinquents asked Hensel if Kim was really his errand boy, as he'd heard that Kim knew how to fight. In response, the bully, despite feeling apprehensive, kept up his lie and asked them to trust him. To prove his point and leave no doubts, he asked them to wait because he was going to show them firsthand. After he walked away, the group was left confused, not knowing what the boy was trying to do. Within seconds, the bully dumped all the food from his tray onto the protagonist's head, leaving him in shock. Immediately after, Hensel revealed himself as the one responsible and quietly apologized, saying it was an accident. Seeing this, Kim understood the misunderstanding and accepted the bully's apology, making Hensel very happy with the boy's humility. From a distance, the delinquents who couldn't hear the conversation started laughing, believing that what Hensel had said was indeed true. With that, the bully returned to the group, recapping his actions, which made the delinquents' trust in him grow. Meanwhile, many students were worried and not understanding what was happening, except for Minche, who felt disappointed. In the school bathroom, moments after being drenched in food, the hero started cleaning himself at the sink. He was in a tough situation since all his clothes were dirty and he even had to wash his hair. However, his innocence still told him that it hadn't been done on purpose. He'd remembered all the kind compliments the bully had given him. This calmed him down, making him think he should let it go, as it was just an accident caused by a friend. Later, Kim went to the LAN house as planned with his new friend Hensel. Hensel explained that he would pay to apologize for what happened earlier, and with no choice, the hero accepted. Without delay, Hensel asked the hero to sit down because he needed to step out for a moment to go to the bathroom. With that, Kim started reflecting on everything that was happening, and despite everything, he was still very happy to be out with a friend. But suddenly, he noticed that both Sura and Minche were also at the LAN house for some reason. Kim then realized that this was why Minche had asked to postpone their study session until 10 o'clock. In any case, Minche noticed that the only available seats were right next to the hero, and he asked if Sarah shouldn't be at school. Sarah explained that even though her 2 days and 3 nights were over, she had informed her teacher that she would stay longer. Minche, for her part, mentioned that this place was full of students from the same school, so the protagonist shouldn't interact with them. Although Kim accepted the conditions, he still felt a bit upset about continuing to be treated this way. Getting straight to the point of why they were there, Hensel called the boy to start playing. The game they chose was the world-famous Asterisk League of Legends Asterisk, and initially the hero performed well. However, at one point he missed a call and ruined the bully's play, which made Hensel very irritated. All this fury came because they almost won, but now that loser had messed everything up. Kim tried to apologize, but Hensel slammed his fists on the table and shouted in anger for everyone to hear. A staff member at the establishment then asked the pair to keep the volume of their conversation down. Upon seeing the muscular staff member, Hensel quickly backed down. To break the tension, the bully jokingly told Kim that if they wanted to talk quietly, they should have stayed home. But then he glanced around and noticed 2 girls sitting nearby. This excited him because the 2 were exactly the type of women he liked. In that moment, Hensel asked Kim to check them out for a second and started expressing all his feelings about them. Between the 2, the bully said he preferred the one with short hair and was already getting the urge to go ask for her number. This behavior wasn't what the hero expected from his new friend, which made him uneasy. Hensel continued saying that girls like them probably had experience and asked if he should try to ask them out. He grew more and more excited about the idea. At that moment, Minche stood up to go to the break room and the bully couldn't stop staring at her. In response, he quickly opened the camera on his phone and switched to the front camera. Hensel aimed the phone's camera to take a photo just as Minche walked by. However, Kim doesn't let that happen and takes action against his friend's perverted behavior. Naturally, the bully is confused by the loser's sudden behavior and isn't able to take the photo. Because of this, Hensel becomes extremely irritated and immediately tells the hero to get his hands off him. But Kim doesn't let the bully go, squeezing his hand tighter and tighter. With that, Hensel asks the hero if he knows these two girls. Finally, in a brave act, the protagonist tells the bully to back off because that girl is his best friend. Still holding Hensel's arm, the hero warns that he will call the police on the pervert if he doesn't stop. The bully, in turn, slaps the boy's hand away to free himself and orders him to get lost. In response, the delinquent decides to leave, warning that he'll make him pay for this embarrassment next time. The next day at the boys' school, Hensel opens the door and walks into the hero's classroom. Without delay, he heads straight to Kim and asks his fake friend to buy some bread for him from the shop. However, the hero couldn't understand why Hensel was suddenly there making demands. The girls next to the delinquent were also excited because he had said he would buy it himself. Nevertheless, the bully reminded the hero that he had given him some sour candy before, so he was asking for bread in return. But Kim began to recall the events of the previous day and the shameless things the boy had said about Minchi. For the first time, he stood his ground and refused to buy bread for his perverted friend, saying he wasn't his lackey. The girls beside the bully started laughing because to them the boy seemed so scared he didn't know what he was saying. This enraged Hensel to kick the hero's desk, knocking him and his belongings to the floor. After the attack, the bully changed his tone, now ordering Kim to do what was asked or face worse consequences. He crouched down, waiting for an answer, just as Minchi entered the room, curious about the strange noise. Continuing to demand the bread, Hensel insisted it was just a simple favor that would be repaid later. Kim realized that the person who was supposed to be his friend was actually acting quite arrogantly. Losing patience, the bully called the hero an idiot and asked if he was being ignored. He even suggested that Kid might be deaf and hadn't been properly raised by his mother. Because of this, the delinquent picked up a slipper from the floor and slapped the hero across the face without mercy. He warned that this should be considered a warning because things wouldn't end well for the protagonist if he disrespected him again. The bully said that he had been much kinder lately because if this were the old him, Kim would already be in pieces. Hensel then boasted about his ability to bluff and challenge the hero to a fight to settle their differences. However, he did this without any real intention of fighting, believing he had already intimidated the boy. Unfortunately for him, the protagonist remembered the perverted act the bully had tried in the LAN house with his friend, and he became furious. Because of this, the hero accepted the challenge to fight, leaving Hensel completely unsettled. Later in the day, elsewhere, a group of delinquents discussed the upcoming fight between the bully and the loser. Despite showing immense confidence, Hensel still didn't understand why Kim had accepted the fight. One of the delinquents asked how the boy would fight, and Hensel explained that he had trained in boxing for 6 months straight. However, the bully definitely didn't like the look Kim had given him earlier. It seemed far too confident. He started to wonder if the boy had some trick up his sleeve, especially since he already had 2 victories under his belt. Nevertheless, Hensel still believed he would win, but knew he'd suffer a lot of embarrassment if he lost. Because of this, he grew even more irritated with the loser and became determined to win at any cost. Later, he went to the school lockers to snoop around. He quickly found Kim's locker to see what was inside. There, he tore up some papers and put sharp objects inside the boy's shoes. As he did this, he tried to convince himself that he wasn't being a coward but simply ensuring his victory. Regardless, he still believed he was more of a genius than a coward and mentally praised his actions. Time passed and the school bell rang, signaling the time to return to class. Minchi approached Kim and mentioned that she heard he was going to fight in the park at 6 p.m. After confirming the rumor, the girl asked if Kim was sure he should fight without any preparation. Kim responded that he was following her advice, which was to stop hiding and face his problems head-on. Hearing this, she asked if the hero had a good reason to fight, and the protagonist quickly remembered Hensel's perverted behavior. Though he showed he had a reason, he still didn't feel it was appropriate to tell Minche about it. In any case, the girl asked if they were going to miss their study session because of the fight, and Kim replied that they'd study right after. This wasn't exactly what Minche wanted to hear, so she advised the hero to take a break, but he didn't listen. Meanwhile, Kim put on his shoes and told the girl to get ready for the lesson he'd teach later. However, the moment the hero put on his shoe, he felt the shards of glass that had been placed inside. Hensel quickly realized his plan had worked, and Minchi became concerned by the pained expression on Kim's face. Without wasting time, the bully appeared, throwing a kick in the air to take advantage of the unfair situation he created. At the same moment, Kim fell. Hensel challenged him to fight right then and there, disregarding the rules. Without giving the hero a chance to defend himself, the bully started kicking him with all his strength. As he attacked, he warned Kim that if he didn't get up, the beatings would continue. Unexpectedly, Hensel hurt himself more during the attack, not being used to kicking hard surfaces. However, the hero wasn't in great condition either, as his foot was bleeding heavily. He understood that his foot was badly injured, and because of that, he couldn't step properly on the ground. Noticing the boy's condition, Hensel became overjoyed, realizing his plan had worked. With shameless confidence, the bully continued to advance, asking what happened to Kim's foot, pretending not to know. Soon some students began gathering around, realizing the fight scheduled for 6 p.m. had already started. Minchi, for her part, grew increasingly worried about the boy, seeing that he was fighting an opponent without preparation and while injured. She thought that fighting in such a desperate state was dangerous and believed the boy should give up. Meanwhile, the bully grew more and more excited as he saw his opponent struggling to stand on his injured foot. Because of this, Hansel relentlessly attacked with multiple jabs, which hit Kim's guard. After the jabs, he managed to land an uppercut through the hero's guard, causing him to groan in pain. The punches began to penetrate the protagonist's defense, hitting his face with both right and left strikes. Kim tried to counterattack, but in his current condition, he was too slow to make a move. In the background, students started praising Hansel's boxing skills and many gathered to watch. Minche, however, believed the bully wasn't that fast or skilled at boxing. But due to Kim's foot injury, he couldn't dodge or land punches as the sole of his foot was cut. To throw a punch with the right hand, one needs to put weight on the left foot, but with his left foot injured, Kim couldn't attack with power. Additionally, without proper support from the front foot, it's impossible to dodge or avoid punches. Thus, Minchi saw this as a fight in which her friend was destined to lose. Hansel, on the other hand, grew increasingly excited about his boxing as every punch landed without difficulty. Without stopping, the bully landed more punches on the boy's ribs, causing significant damage. Finally, Hansel finished the sequence of attacks with his secret uppercut combo. With everything going so well so far, the bully began to believe he could actually fight well. The group of delinquents from earlier laughed and watched the fight purely for entertainment. Seeing this, Hansel shouted from a distance that this was the skill of the second-in-command of Gumion Middle School. Suddenly, new figures arrive at the scene of the fight, none other than the senior Philip and Daniel. Without delay, the leader of the delinquent group notices the hardworking boy from before fighting once again. In this case, he decides to stop and watch the fight, though the hero is not in a good position. Already badly injured, Kim wonders what he should do as his opponent is completely dominating him, leaving him helpless. At this moment, his foot feels like it's on fire and Kim finds himself completely trapped. In this state, he can't use anything he learned from his training sessions with Minche. With that, he wonders if he should just give up and hand the victory to the bully. But then, he remembers how perverse the delinquent is and what he was willing to do to his friend. This makes him realize that he can't forgive the things Hansel said about Minche. However, Hansel doesn't stop and lands a punch to Kim's solar plexus, knocking the wind out of him and nearly defeating him. Without hesitation, Hansel continues to attack, saying this is what happens when prey messes with a lion. As he attacked, he claimed that Sangbom and Daebom were nothing compared to him. Feeling overconfident, he declared himself the true predator of the school and threw the boy into a wall, which cracked upon impact. To further humiliate him, Hansel grabbed Kim by the hair and dragged him over to the crowd watching the fight. He announced that it was time to start the second round and reiterated his warning that prey should never mess with a predator. Slapping Kim on the head, he ordered him to open his eyes so he could see. But when Kim opened his eyes, he saw a different person among the spectators. That person was Sarah, which made the hero question why she was there. The first thought that came to the protagonist's mind was that she was there to go to the LAN house with Minche. However, upon seeing her, he quickly remembered the training sessions they had together on the rooftop. Because of this, he shifted his stance to a left-handed one, and Philip asked Daniel if it was due to his injured foot. In response, Daniel said that changing stances in a fight is not easy. Just as a right-handed person can't use their left hand properly, a left-handed person can either. That's why switching stances can cause imbalance, though Philip agreed that there might be a reason behind it. Quickly, the hero switched to the stance he had learned from Sarah. He placed his injured foot in the back since, although the sole was severely wounded, the ball of the foot was still manageable. He remembered that left-handed fighters are often called counterpunchers because they frequently aim for a decisive blow. Seeing this, Hansel questioned why the protagonist had changed his stance but assumed it wouldn't change the outcome. Some time ago, Sarah had explained that even if someone was naturally right-handed, it could be worth practicing a left-handed stance. This was because there are moments when you might need to change your leg position if it gets injured during a fight. In any case, this wasn't something that could be mastered in 1 or 2 attempts. So Sarah made sure Kim practiced it extensively while taking numerous hits. After many sparring sessions, even though he was still a bit awkward, Kim had already grasped the essence of the stance. Without delay, the hero's plan began and he slowly intertwined his hand with Hansel's. This irritated Hansel, who pulled his hand away, questioning why he was being grabbed. But Kim kept grabbing the bully's hand every time he managed to pull free. This was because Sarah had already told him that irritating the opponent by touching their dominant hand was the first step. As a result, Hansel grew furious and prepared to attack with his only free hand. And once the opponent launched his attack, all Kim had to do was throw an even faster punch to intercept it. This was the left-hand counterpunch technique that haunted right-handed fighters in street fights. Later, the day continued as usual, with Kim's victory, and at the bus station, Sarah said goodbye, saying she would miss him. Before leaving, she praised the hero's fight and boasted about having taught him well. In response, Kim remained humble and agreed, saying it was all thanks to her teachings. Changing the subject, Minchie reminded Kim that Sarah had promised to do something with him if he won the fight. Back in the past, during the fight against the bully, after countering, the hero was able to unleash an incredible sequence of punches. At that moment, Sarah appeared, praising Kim and startling Minchie with her sudden arrival. Regardless, she commented that the boy was doing really well, considering he had only practiced for a week. In any case, she shouted that if the hero won, she would actually give him a chance. However, at that moment, the protagonist was so focused that he couldn't hear anything. Hensel, on the other hand, couldn't understand why the boy had suddenly been filled with so much energy. In response, he tried to retreat, thinking that the loser wouldn't be able to chase him with his injured foot. In this situation, he already knew his reputation was completely ruined by how the fight was turning out. Without delay, the bully began looking around for something to use as a weapon. After a few moments, he spotted a bicycle that wasn't chained up. He quickly went over, grabbed it, and threw it at Kim's face. Unfortunately, the hero felt the impact, and the students watching grew worried about the brutality of the fight. At that point, Hansel shouted that there were no rules in a street fight and continued attacking without mercy. The bicycle was soon destroyed, and Hansel continued his assault, now using his fists. In a state of euphoria, he yelled that everything was going perfectly as Kim took hits while keeping his guard up. But in that moment of distress, Kim remembered something important. In the past, Sarah had warned him about a left-handed fighter's weakness. The weakness was being cornered, such as against a wall, for example. Since left-handers use a retreat and counterattack technique, this position makes that strategy ineffective. Kim had asked if there was a solution to this seemingly inescapable problem. Sarah had smiled and reminded him that despite everything, the style was still centered on counterattacks. The first step was to raise his guard, which the hero was already doing. Then he needed to keep blocking while waiting for the right moment when the opponent's guard would drop. Sarah had said it was part of the strategy to pretend to be hurt, as this would excite the opponent into throwing more punches. Inevitably, this would create more gaps in their movements, and to throw a stronger punch, the back foot could be braced against the wall for stability. Kim prepared to push off the wall with his foot to deliver a much stronger punch as soon as he saw an opening. Finally, at a certain moment, Hensel's guard dropped again, leaving his face exposed. Without wasting a second, the hero used his counterattack to finish the bully once and for all. Although Hensel felt the blow deeply, he wasn't completely knocked out, which meant another lesson was in store. If the opponent wasn't defeated with one hit, Sarah had advised Kim to mount his enemy and start pounding on them. So Kim followed the advice and jumped on the bully, who had fallen to the ground. Hensel, on the other hand, didn't understand why he was there, as he hadn't even seen the punch that knocked him down. But the hero simply responded by telling him to think about it while getting hit. With that, Kim began striking the delinquent's face repeatedly, unleashing all of his pent-up anger. Bit by bit, the delinquent felt the punches more intensely, and in desperation, he cried out for help. Realizing he was losing the fight, he called for help from the group of bullies he had befriended earlier. However, the leader refused to follow the boys' orders, saying that a fight should be settled between those involved. Hensel panicked even more and hurled insults at the group. But at that moment, he had bigger problems to deal with, as Kim was relentlessly beating him. As a last-ditch effort, he begged the protagonist to stop and apologize while eyeing a shard of glass nearby. Being a naturally empathetic person, the hero actually paused, giving the bully time to rush and grab the glass to attack. But the protagonist was no longer as naive as before and quickly noticed the deception, defending himself. Kim then continued to hit the delinquent until his immense rage finally subsided. It lasted so long that Hensel even ended up wetting his pants. In the end, all that was left was the hero, tired but victorious. His enemy lay defeated on the ground, and many students were astonished by the courage and ferocity of the protagonist. With the fight over, Philip was the most pleased, as the boy had managed to entertain him like no one else. Afterwards, Sarah said her goodbyes to both of her friends. She praised the boy for his fight, and Kim thanked her for everything she had taught him. But Minchie stepped in, reminding Sarah about the promise she had made conditional on the hero's victory. At that moment, Sarah genuinely considered giving the boy a chance. However, before she could clarify anything, her bus arrived. And so they said their farewells while Minchie teased Kim about his actions with her friend. In any case, the girl also said her goodbyes and thanked Kim for the time they spent together. However, the one who was most thankful was the hero because thanks to her, he was able to defeat the bully who had dishonored his friend. For this, he was very grateful, and it was hard for him to say goodbye to his now dear friend. Later on the subway, Minchie thought it appropriate to ask the boy why he went so far in the fight. At first, Kim didn't understand, but the girl stood firm in her opinion. After a few seconds, she recalled everything that had happened and said she had never seen the boy act like that before. In response, the hero explained that he did what he did because the bully had messed with someone close to him. Obviously, the girl didn't understand this, as she thought her classmate didn't have any friends, so the protagonist gave some random excuse. Still, he seemed quite suspicious in Minchie's eyes. In any case, she only advised Kim not to go overboard in the future to avoid causing any permanent problems. However, Kim couldn't believe that Minchie would still blame him if she knew the real reason for his stress. Later, during school hours, a group of bullies discussed the fight that had ruined Hensel's reputation. One of them mentioned that it was the first time they had seen someone wet their pants out of fear, and another said it would have been wiser if the boy had given up. At that moment, a new face appeared, catching the attention of the delinquents. One of them asked for the person's name, but he replied that the boy didn't need to know that. Even though he didn't give his name, this boy was Seo Doyen, a first-year student from Class 8. However, the delinquents claimed they couldn't hear what he said because of his quiet voice. So the boy slowly approached and, getting close to the bully, asked if he was the #1 first-year student. Now, hearing him clearly, the delinquent said that he had indeed dominated all the high schools before arriving here. However, the man didn't understand why he was being asked this and wondered if Seo intended to become his lackey, just like Hensel. In response, the boy explained that he intended to become the strongest of the first years and was looking for the person he needed to fight. Upon hearing this, the delinquents burst into laughter. At that point, the bully approached and asked if Seo was seriously wanting to fight him to become #1. Unexpectedly, the boy agreed and challenged him to a fight just as the school bell rang. Even though he was irritated, the bully refused to fight then, saying he had to get back to class. However, Seo clearly stated that if the man left now, he would consider it his victory. This caught the bully's attention and made him even angrier. Without delay, Seo reiterated that if the man left, he would consider it an act of surrender. Faced with this, the bully flew into a frenzy, cursing the boy for being so bold. In this case, he lunged at the boy to teach him a lesson before picking more fights. However, the boy easily dodged the first punch with a boxing pendulum. Using more pendulums, he managed to keep dodging every punch thrown at him. Then the boy retaliated in kind, landing several powerful punches on the delinquent. Not stopping with boxing, Seo also delivered a low kick, hitting the bully squarely and breaking 3 of his ribs. With that, the delinquent was sent flying and fell to the ground, completely defeated and defenseless. Seeing this, the other 2 members of the group witnessed everything, and the bald one, the bravest of the 2, rushed in to avenge his friend. However, he couldn't last even one exchange of punches before being taken down by a counterpunch. Then the other delinquent joined the fight with a high kick, but Seo was faster and closed the distance between them. This made it easy for him to counter with a jab right to the middle of the opponent's face. In the end, within just a few seconds, the 3 first-year bullies were completely defeated with minimal effort. As evening fell, Seo made his way to the warehouse where the delinquents held their meetings. Without delay, he opened the door and found himself facing a crowd of school troublemakers. Naturally, the regulars were surprised by the boy's presence and asked why he had entered without even knocking. The leader, in turn, asked if the boy was a first-year student and warned that he knew this wasn't a place accessible to everyone. Without wasting time, the boy approached and bowed, explaining that he wanted to join Invincible. In response, Philip said they didn't accept just anyone and added that the boy didn't even seem like he knew how to fight. Seo then informed him that he had defeated the top-ranked first-year student and therefore had become the strongest. Although Philip was pleased by this statement, he still wasn't convinced of Seo's strength. That was because the boy had defeated someone Philip didn't recognize as the strongest and would only acknowledge Seo if he defeated someone he trusted. Seo asked what he should do, and Philip offered to guide him to where he wanted to go. As an experiment, the leader of Invincible pulled out his phone and showed Seo a picture of Kim. He explained that if Seo defeated this person, all the delinquents would recognize him as strong. Confident in his abilities, Seo understood what needed to be done, giving a serious look. At the school snack bar, the hero was looking at some products to grab during the break. He thought that it had been a few days since he defeated his former friend Quack Hensel. Nowadays, some people still whispered when they saw Kim, but almost no one had the courage to pick a fight with him. This filled the hero with happiness, and he began to believe that peace had finally arrived. However, he quickly remembered that he was at the snack bar to buy some bread for Minchae, who had ordered him to do so. Suddenly, the protagonist's attention was drawn by a group of nerds who called him their friend. Since they hadn't introduced themselves before, one of them informed Kim that they were outsiders from other classes, and he remembered them. The boy from the group of misfits continued, saying that Kim might not know, but they were rooting for him as they always watched his fights. They also explained that they were the ones filming and posting them on social media because, to them, the hero was the hope of all losers. The leader of the group remarked that seeing a loser fight against bullies really made his day, and the protagonist shyly thanked him. By the way, the leader asked if Kim wanted to join them for a snack at their club, as it was a public place. Initially, the hero didn't quite understand, so the boy explained that they were all in the same club, an anime appreciation club. The protagonist then asked if he should really go with them, and the leader reiterated the invitation, saying that many fans were waiting for him. Later in the club room, the leader entered, saying there might be few people since it was lunchtime. But unexpectedly, there was only one person, a girl named Baek Daesum. She quickly turned around, happy that her friends were back, but then noticed Kim's presence among them. This made the girl incredibly embarrassed, and she screamed with excitement. Seeing this, the leader asked why she was acting so strangely and jokingly suggested she was reading an 18+ webtoon, which she obviously denied. Kim, on the other hand, commented that it was probably because of his presence, and the leader confirmed, saying she was also a fan of the hero. Since this wasn't quite the reason Kim expected, the protagonist became very anxious. Baek quickly got up from her chair but stumbled and fell to her knees on the floor. Because of this, she remained there, groaning in agony from the pain. However, something more important was in front of her, so she gathered her strength to stand up. She quickly recovered and extended her hand to greet the hero. Meanwhile, the leader asked why the girl was wearing mismatched slippers, and she realized she had accidentally grabbed one of her father's. Kim shook the girl's hand in return, though she already knew his name. Embarrassed, she told him that she knew his name because she had watched all of his fights. At this, the leader explained that Baek was such a big fan of the hero that she probably had a crush on him. Naturally, the girl got irritated because the club leader was spot on, and in response, he apologized for crossing the line. One of the boys, however, commented that Baek was someone who felt attracted to losers, judging by her ex-boyfriend. The girl, in turn, denied ever dating the guy they were talking about. In this context, another of the losers believed he might have a chance with Baek, but her heart was clearly set on just one person. Witnessing everything, Kim thought that despite the bickering, the atmosphere in the club was quite pleasant. And changing the subject, one of the members asks if Kim wants to have some snacks with them while they watch an anime episode. Kim promptly declines, so Baek goes to the computer to play episode 1 of the anime they were watching. In another room at school, Minchi is still waiting for the bread the boy promised to buy, and due to his long delay, she compares his inefficiency to Jiwon's. Back in the club room, everyone watches the anime episode that Baek chose. While watching, Kim eats some snacks with his new club friends. To start a conversation, the club leader asks if Kim watches a lot of anime. Unexpectedly, the hero denies it, even though all of his characteristics suggest otherwise. One of the members, however, decides to ruin the experience for the others by threatening to reveal the ending, which sparks an argument. Returning to the anime topic, the leader asks what kind of anime girl Kim likes, but Kim says he's never thought about it. In that case, he asks what type of girl the protagonist prefers in real life. Baek inevitably stops eating to listen closely to her beloved's opinion, and fortunately, the hero responded that he'd like someone who would love him even if he was a loser. This description perfectly matched the characteristics of the girl, who now couldn't contain her excitement. At that moment, her body starts to heat up, and she begins to take off her clothes to cool down. However, she is quickly stopped by one of the losers, who warns her that she's not wearing any underwear. Then a somewhat uncomfortable atmosphere sets in, and Kim becomes increasingly suspicious of these people. Later, the event finally comes to an end, and the losers bid farewell to their hero, who still doesn't know how to take compliments. And before the boy leaves, Baek invites him to come back more often so they can watch more episodes together. Meanwhile, Seo is getting closer to the loser's club when he finally spots his target. Among the boys in the club was the man Philip had asked him to defeat, and now his strength would be tested. Without delay, Seo approaches the hero, who is confused by this sudden approach from a stranger. Getting straight to the point, the boy asks if Kim is the strongest first-year student. But unfortunately, the protagonist can't quite hear what the boy is saying. In this case, Seo steps closer and challenges the protagonist to a direct fight for the title of the strongest. Obviously, the hero doesn't like the idea and refuses the challenge. In his mind, the hero is already tired because even after defeating Hensel, these challenges keep appearing in his life. At this point, one of the club members steps in to help and tells Seo to stop with these indecent challenges. However, the younger bully responds with a punch to his face, leaving Kim in complete shock. Next, he lands a punch in the boy's stomach, and as the boy falls to the ground, Seo begins stomping on his back. Seeing this, the hero pleads for the man to stop, but Seo says he'll only stop if he gets his fight. But at that moment, a voice from the background also asks the boy to stop his aggressions. That person, however, was Baek, someone Seo recognizes from his past, which makes the situation even more confusing. Because of this, Kim unexpectedly discovers that the two know each other, and Seo returns to his request for a fight. In this case, the beat loser asks if the boy is still determined to go through with it. In response, the bully raises his arm to punch him again, telling him to stay out of it. However, Baek tries her best to prevent the violence from continuing and runs toward her acquaintance. But due to her clumsy nature, she bumps her knee into the loser's back and falls on top of him. Seeing this, the hero thinks that this looks even more painful than the punch from before. Because of this, the loser finally passes out, and Baek also feels a lot of pain, though she's more concerned about her friend Gwangtae. To try to bring him back to consciousness, the girl starts shaking the boy while shouting his name. Amid all this chaos, the bully just watches from a distance, waiting for Kim's answer. Either way, Baek's appearance was something he didn't expect, so he decided to retreat for now. After all that, Kim wonders who on earth this boy is and what kind of relationship he has with the girl. In any case, the hero remembered that he forgot to bring the bread to Minchi. So after returning to her presence, the boy went through a hard time trying to explain himself. However, Minchi just told Kim to shut up because she couldn't care less about his personal life. One thing she does prioritize, though, is punctuality, and Kim is not allowed to be late. Despite being there now, the hero serves as a seat for the girl to apologize for his tardiness. Irritated, she warns him that from now on, his tasks must come first. With that, the protagonist accepts the conditions, although it felt even worse than when he was bullied by Sangbong. Soon Kim can no longer hold the bench position and falls, causing Minchi to topple over him. Since the hero began learning how to fight with his classmate Lee Minche, he was able to defeat Cho Sangbom. And besides him, he also managed to beat Han Daebong and Kwak Hansel. Because of this, he thought no one would despise him anymore, but he was certainly wrong. That's because there were still people who wanted to fight him in various places and groups. Everywhere Kim went, he continued to be challenged to fights due to his growing reputation. However, despite continuing to be challenged, the hero no longer wanted to fight, so he avoided it. But these actions only caused those hostile stares to increase even more. In this case, while looking at himself in the mirror, the hero wondered why he still seemed so weak. Not only that, he also considered that because his last opponent had been someone weak, the fight didn't make much of an impact. For these reasons and others, the hero still seemed like a joke even after winning and becoming stronger. Minchi, for her part, was firm in her advice that everything would end if Kim just got stronger. In her opinion, as long as the boy didn't avoid fighting anymore and won all the battles, others would soon recognize him. Therefore, for him, this was the only path, and he would have to continue strengthening himself. In any case, Minchi says that today is the day to improve the technique taught in the last training. The technique is a mixture of the front kick the boy learned earlier with the side kick. With that, the strike is meant to hit an intermediate angle in the opponent's stomach. It's important to remember not to kick with the top of the foot, but with a base called the instep, which gives the move its name. And since the person is aiming for a vital spot, the liver becomes the best target. Therefore, the move is called the instep kick to the liver, and should be performed with the mentioned part of the foot. With Minchi's foot very close to his face, the boy says he understands. However, the girl asks why Kim is standing still, staring at her foot. And then she gets his liver with a kick, because the boy was sniffing instead of paying attention. For acting like a pervert, Kim really deserved the hit he took, but at least now he understood how the move worked. With that, she says a critical hit leads to an instant KO, and without delay, she orders the hero to get up to continue learning. The next day at school, the hero enters his classroom paying close attention to his surroundings. That's because he was trying to avoid contact with those who wanted to fight him. However, someone was there and poked him, which scared him a lot as it turned out to be Bakdasum. A bit embarrassed, she says she has something to say and decides to get straight to the point. The hero, for his part, also feels embarrassed, remembering what they had said about Bake having a thing for losers. At that moment, all that was going through the protagonist's mind was that a confession was coming. However, breaking the mood completely, Bak simply asks Kim to fight Seo for her, which leaves the hero in disbelief. Immediately after this statement, the hero asked what she meant by that. And just as she said, the girl reiterates her request for the protagonist to fight Seo Doyen. In this case, Kim asks if this man is the same one they saw in front of the club room. Bake explains that she overheard some of their classmates talking about what she was about to explain. Some time ago in her class, a boy mentioned that Seo was going to fight someone named Kim Ji-hyuk, and the girl heard everything. The reason wasn't because Kim was famous, but because Philip had made it a requirement to defeat him in order to join Invincible. In this case, the boys wondered if this was true, thinking Kim was weak and that the mission would be easy. One of them replied that Seo was already preparing for the fight, and another expressed interest in taking the test as well. To explain his motivation, the boy said that the group was the elite of the school and they already had direct connections with gangs. It was said that after graduation, there were plans to place all of them directly into gangs across Korea. Additionally, rumors claim that one of the responsible groups, the MZ gang, was already making millions from this. All of this was explained to Kim, leaving him in complete shock. He began to recap everything that had been said about the entrance test and the delinquent group. The girl explained that Seo used to be her childhood friend. He used to be a good boy, but at some point, he started fighting and doing bad things, which led him down a dark path. Because of this, Bake stated that Seo wasn't the type of person to do bad things like he was now. She was afraid that her old friend would fall even deeper into a dangerous path if nothing was done. In this case, the girl asked from the bottom of her heart for Kim to defeat him in a battle and stop this cycle of hatred. Faced with this, Kim didn't know what to do and couldn't think of the right decision to make. At that moment, he recalled the criminal organization's admission test. He also remembered that the girl had asked him to fight Seo, but the hero was only fighting to protect himself and wasn't as good as Seo believed. Because of this, Kim explained that he wasn't confident about fighting again, as he didn't know if he could win. He continued saying that he was just a guy trying to escape the bullying from the tough guys. Therefore, no matter Seo Doyen's story, he still wouldn't be able to help. So with regret, Kim told Bak that he couldn't do what she was asking. In response, Bake bowed, apologizing and saying that she had only asked because she thought Kim had a plan. Unfortunately, she began to cry heavily while apologizing for making such a request. Seeing this, the hero asked if she was okay, and she apologized again, saying she shouldn't be crying. She then ran off but tripped and fell as usual, hurting her knee. Naturally, Kim rushed to help her, but the girl didn't want to talk anymore and quickly got up to leave. In the end, the hero stood there, disbelieving that he was being used as a test for entering the Invincible group. He believed this was why more and more intimidating guys kept challenging him to fights. And in this case, the hero didn't know what to do to get out of this sudden situation. Later, he went to ask Minchia for advice and she said Kim should meet them and confront them directly. Being a rational person, the hero thought this was madness, but the girl insisted that he had to cut the problem at its root. She explained that Kim could make a deal or something else as long as he spoke directly to the leader. However, the hero didn't even know what this group was or where to find them aside from a few representatives. In this case, Minchi called him pathetic and asked him to wait a second. She mentioned that she knew some girls who sometimes smoked with her and she would ask them. The boy thanked her but recalled that she had said she didn't have any friends. Minchi clarified that they were just girls she smoked with occasionally, and at that moment, she received a response. Her contact even went so far as to send a picture of the group's representative. Unexpectedly, the leader turned out to be the senior who had been in the crowd during all the fights. Minchi showed Kim the picture of the man and explained where he needed to go to find him. The place was the equipment room at the gym, which looked more like an abandoned warehouse. Without delay, the hero went there to confront them about making him a target for the recruits. Upon entering, the protagonist called out to see if anyone was there and was soon met with a sea of delinquents. Naturally, a sight terrified him, especially when many of them approached to intimidate him. However, to his relief, Philip held positive feelings toward him and soon recognized him. Because of this, he asked all the members to make way for the boy to pass. As Kim approached the leader, he trembled with fear, being surrounded by a group allied with a gang. He was extremely nervous, but since he had come this far, he decided not to back down from his objective. Summoning all the confidence he had, the hero introduced himself as a first-year student along with his name. The leader, in turn, said he knew and asked how the boy was doing. But the protagonist got straight to the point and asked if it was true that his group was using him as an entry test. Without the slightest shame, Philip confirmed with a smile that it was true. In this case, the hero asked why he was doing that, given that he was just a normal student. In response, the senior explained that the boy's fights were very entertaining, and that's why he was simply giving him more opponents. The truth is, Philip was curious to see how strong Kim was and how strong the opponents he could defeat were. That's why he told everyone who wanted to join Invincible that the test was simply to beat Kim, a first-year student. However, it wouldn't count as a victory if they won with a gang or through a trap. He made it clear that the duel had to be a one-on-one fought with honor. Consequently, everyone already knew the benefits of this, which included securing a spot in Invincible. With that, the leader guaranteed that all members could earn as much money as they wanted. Additionally, they could have any wish fulfilled, being served by many, and all this would be possible by defeating just one person. After explaining everything, Philip understood that there were probably many people after Kim, and for the hero, things became clearer. In any case, he asked what the leader would do if he refused to fight. In response, Philip said that in that case, he would have to change the terms of the honorable fights. He would allow his followers to fight in any way they saw fit, whether in a gang or in an ambush. Obviously, the hero didn't like this at all and found it extremely unfair. This was because the leader of the delinquent group was forcing him to fight one way or another. Therefore, the hero wondered what he should do as he had no desire to fight. Then he remembered that Minchi had told him to get stronger and keep winning no matter who challenged him. Because as long as Kim continued to accept his challenges with his head held high, the consequences would eventually disappear. Thus, it became clear that the only solution was to follow his classmates' advice and become stronger. Therefore, the protagonist asked the leader what would happen if he defeated his challengers. Kim asked if the leader would make these aggressors stop following him and finally leave him alone. At this, Daniel commented that the boy was making a bold move, but Philip had no problem accepting it. He said that if the hero defeated one of the candidates, he wouldn't bother him anymore. So Kim began to seriously consider this, and with no other choice, he believed it was the best path. Soon, the hero accepted the conditions as long as the leader of the delinquents kept his word, which made him very happy. A few weeks later, the fight between Seo and Kim arrived and dozens of students gathered around them. Face to face, Seo was determined to secure his spot in the group, and the hero was determined not to be bullied anymore. In the background, much of the Invincible group was watching the upcoming fight, so the protagonist needed to show his seriousness. Before the fight began, Kim mentioned that he had heard his opponent was good at striking, so the hero provoked him by saying he would beat him in his own game using only strikes. 4 weeks ago in the gym equipment room, Kim reached an agreement with Philip about his piece at school. With a smile, the leader of the delinquents promised to leave the protagonist alone if he defeated one of the candidates. So Kim prepared to fight once again and later reported everything that had happened to Minchi. That's how he ended up deciding to fight someone named Seo Doyen. Minchi simply told the protagonist to keep watch for her. In response, the hero remarked that smoking is terrible for one's health, which the girl couldn't care less about. In any case, Minchi recapped that from what she heard, if he defeats Doyen, the Invincible group will no longer bother him. However, she still thinks these boys have nothing better to do, given that they chose someone like Kim to mess with. So Kim asked if she thought he could win because despite having issued the challenge, he still wasn't confident. Reminding him of what she had said earlier, Minchi reiterated that to achieve his goals, the hero had to win regardless of the opponent. Even if he was a coward, the boy still had an excellent teacher, so he shouldn't worry about useless things. Faced with this, the protagonist thought that in moments like these, Minchu was quite reliable. But breaking the moment, she tossed her bag to him and asked him to carry it. In response, Kim asked how long he would have to carry it, and Minchu replied that whenever she asked, he should help her, at least with that. However, Kim wasn't happy with this at all, as even though he was getting stronger, he was still being bossed around by his friend. Later, back at the school's central courtyard, Minchi asked if the person she saw was Kim's target, and he confirmed it. That person was Siu Doyen, the bully who had challenged the hero to a fight to join Invincible. Minchi commented that he seemed pretty average in both height and weight. Compared to Sangbom and Daebom, he seemed lighter, which might make the fight easier than expected. Suddenly, that shy hand touched the protagonist's shoulder again. It was Baek asking what the two were doing together, which made Minchi raise an eyebrow. In response, Minchi asked if Kim knew this girl, and the hero explained they had met by chance. He mentioned that Baek was the childhood friend of his next opponent, and he had already been thinking of asking her a few questions. Minchi believed that if the girl grew up with the bully, they must know each other quite well. Anyway, Baek, feeling a bit shy, whispered something into Minchi's ear. Unexpectedly, she mentioned that she didn't believe there could be such a pretty girl at this school. Naturally, both Kim and Minche were left completely confused by this sudden compliment. Continuing, Baek asked the hero what his relationship was with this beautiful girl. She then asked if Minchi was his girlfriend, causing both of them to feel quite differently about the question. Minchi became furious, warning that she could punch back even though they had just met. Baek quickly apologized, and Minchi decided it was more important to ask about Siu Doyen. As a more fitting apology, she told Baek to spill everything she knew about him. Seeing this, Kim suggested they go somewhere quieter to talk. They headed to the club room, where Baek learned about the hero's plan to fight the bully. She was thrilled because she thought the protagonist was doing it for the good of Seo. This left Minchi a bit confused, so she asked Kim for context, but the hero dodged the topic. He explained that he was trying to gather information about Seo and said that any tips would help him during the fight. Baek became thoughtful, explaining that it had been a long time since she'd last been in contact with the bully. She wasn't sure about his current state but knew how he used to be, as they had practiced mixed martial arts together. This was valuable information, so Minchi asked how long they had trained together. Baek explained that they had trained for about 3 years, but Seo might have continued after she stopped. Minchi realized that this was a considerable amount of time, and even though their weight classes were similar, martial arts experience was a significant advantage. She warned that depending on Seo's skill level, the hero's chances of winning could vary. Minchi then asked how skilled Seo was and if he had competed in any tournaments. Baek revealed that not only had Seo competed, but he had also won every tournament he entered. At this, Minchi began to lose hope, and Kim asked why the situation was so bad given that he had also learned martial arts. In response, Minchi explained that there was a big difference between someone who had trained for months and someone who had trained for years. Regardless, Baek mentioned that there were videos of the tournaments and quickly played one for them. As she started the video, she said this was Doyen's first match during his debut in his first year of high school. At the moment the fight began, the bully's opponent took the initiative and Seo dodged easily. Unexpectedly, he managed to counter with a hook just seconds after the enemy's attack. His entire body moved with great speed and flexibility, even when he was off balance. He also had a good eye for punches, knowing exactly how to position himself inside the ring. In addition, he finished his opponent with a kick, proving he wasn't just a puncher. The match ended in only 15 seconds, resulting in a one-sided victory for Seo Doyen. It's said that his nickname was impressive because he had amazed his coach. And after that match, Seo won all of his fights with knockouts in the first round. He participated in many amateur matches until his 3rd year of high school and never lost. In this context, Minchu couldn't have been more discouraged and worried about Kim. Logically, she understood that at this level, the boy's performance was similar to that of a semi-professional fighter. Therefore, it seemed unlikely that the hero could defeat someone like that, but he was still determined to try. That's because he had Minchi as his teacher, something Baek didn't know until that moment. So Kim explained that the girl was actually his fighting instructor, and Minchi wasn't happy that this had been revealed. Because of this, Baek fell even more in love with Minchi, as not only was she beautiful, but she was also skilled in fighting. Returning to the main topic, the hero's instructor asked if there was any weak point in Seo. Since Baek used to fight against him, Minchi believed she might know, so Baek began thinking about it. At that moment, something came to her mind, but Baek wasn't sure if it was really a weakness. Either way, Minchi simply asked her to share anything that might be helpful. With as many details as possible, Baek told them everything she knew about Seo's weakness. During the entire explanation, Minchi listened carefully, and with that information, she concluded that Kim might have a chance to win. After hearing the explanations, the hero and his instructor went to the rooftop. Minchi immediately informed him that they would start special training to defeat Seo Doyen. However, she didn't understand why Baek was there, so Baek replied that she was there to help. The girl reminded them that she had also learned martial arts, and with no other choice, Minchi accepted her presence as long as she didn't interfere. Still, Kim was confused about Baek's ability to help him with anything. By the way, Minchi noticed that Baek was wearing many layers of clothing, and Baek explained that she had something on underneath. With that, she took off her jacket and revealed she was wearing workout clothes, which left the instructor incredulous. In response, Baek reminded them that it had been mentioned that this was going to be a day of fighting and training. Looking back at the club room, Minchi asked if there really was a weak point in Seo Doyeon. Even though she wasn't sure, Baek said something came to mind when she thought about it. Without delay, she explained that in the gym, Seo had always been focused on striking and almost never grappled. Kim, for his part, questioned what that meant, but Minchi immediately grasped the opportunity this presented. Baek explained that Doyeon didn't like physical contact with others and really didn't enjoy ground fighting. Thus, Minchi explained to the hero that grappling referred to wrestling and jiu-jitsu. The fighting style of MMA can be divided into two main categories, striking and grappling. Striking refers to things like boxing or martial arts, such as kickboxing and Muay Thai, where the goal is to hit your opponent directly. Grappling, on the other hand, involves techniques like throws and submissions as seen in wrestling and jiu-jitsu. In MMA, it's necessary to be good at both striking and grappling, but some choose to specialize in one area. Most of the time, this happens because striking is more enjoyable than grappling. That's why Minchi was initially reluctant to teach martial arts to the protagonist. She explained that they would have to be skin to skin, hugging and sweating on each other while rolling around on the ground. With this, it was understood that Seo is good at striking but terrible at ground and grappling fights. In this case, Minchi truly believed that Kim could be the winner. She explained that no matter how good Seo was at striking, if he didn't know how to handle grappling, the fight would eventually end in Kim's favor. So from now on, the two of them would train grappling and ground fighting like crazy. However, on the first day, Baek showed up to interfere with her strange behavior. Anyway, Minchi says it's time to start practicing wrestling. She will teach one of the basic principles of wrestling called the underhook or armpit lock. At this point, Baek asks some indecent questions about what came to mind when she heard the term. Minchi gets even more furious with her, almost to the point of kicking her off the rooftop. Returning to the training, Minchi instructs Kim to come toward her so she can demonstrate the move. As she grabs the protagonist, she explains that one arm must go under the opponent's armpit to create the underhook. However, Kim is more focused on the girl's scent than the move itself. Seeing this, Baek compares the underhook to a gentle hug, which makes Minchi even angrier. Regardless, Minchi explains the move again, stating that it's used to secure a two-handed grip. Once the grip is secured, you can lift your opponent and throw them to the ground. After bringing them down, they can be finished off with a choke. From now on, Kim and Baek will practice this like crazy in preparation to defeat Seo. The plan is to take down the bully with a submission technique when he's on the ground. Minchi notices Baek standing idly by and assigns her as the practice dummy. In this case, Baek's weight is questioned, and although hesitant to share, she admits to being 50 kilos. With no more time to waste, Kim has to start practicing immediately. Though embarrassed, the hero tries to perform the grappling technique, but the two fall onto the mat awkwardly. Minchi corrects him, saying he needs to push his hips out more. With countless attempts, Kim gradually improves his skills. In wrestling, endurance is crucial, so the endurance training begins next. At first, they start with a variation of pike push-ups to strengthen their upper bodies. Supervising everything, Minchi orders them to push their torsos with more force. Then the bar workout begins, and Kim is determined to strengthen his back muscles. After finishing that, he moves on to train his conditioning by swinging battle ropes. After a long day of training, the two are completely exhausted. Due to their extreme fatigue, they lie on the rooftop until evening, when Kim serves dinner. While they eat, Minchi asks why Baek doesn't talk to Seo directly instead of going through Kim. Baek explains that they lost contact after some strange things happened. She continues, saying that after Seo learned martial arts, he started bullying people, which caused her to distance herself. Minchi understands her reasons but still asks what it was like when the two were close. Baek shares that back then, they often visited each other's houses and went to school together in the mornings. Seo helped her with her homework, and if martial arts classes ended late, he always walked her home. Minchi asks if that means Seo was actually interested in her. However, Baek says the thought had never crossed her mind all these years. Meanwhile, in another area, as night falls, bottles of alcohol and cigarette butts litter the ground. Inside a small space, numerous delinquents are gathered for a gathering, and among them is Seo. Despite being surrounded by acquaintances, Seo shows no interest in talking or drinking and remains focused on sketching something on a piece of paper. That something, however, was just a caricature of Baek, showing that she had always held a place in his heart. As they drank and smoked, one of the thugs mentioned that he had also dropped out of school. He explained that a teacher annoyed him for not greeting him properly, so he punched the teacher hard. Upon hearing this, a friend admired his action, claiming they had the blood of heroes who don't bow to anyone. As a result, he was happy that they all dropped out of school to make money instead of worrying about useless things like college. However, he remembered that Doyeon was still going to school, so the delinquent noted that despite being a bad place, school was still a good spot to recruit members. While the boy is at school, the gang he's a part of can establish connections with Invincible. In this case, he asks if Seo has managed to join yet, but the boy replies that he hasn't. Hearing this, the bully questions why it's taking so long, considering that Invincible always welcomes people who know how to fight. He quickly becomes irritated because, even as a favor to a friend, Seo wasn't showing much interest. One of the other delinquents then asks Seokju what kind of business they're going to do. In response, the leader tells him not to worry, as he's going to buy a car for all of them, but to simplify, it's a business involving currency. Hearing this, one of the bullies is impressed by the leader's investor mindset, and Seokju responds, as he said before, that they won't need to go to college. However, for their plans to succeed, Doyen will need to work hard, as establishing a connection with Invincible is a crucial part of the plan. With these expectations in mind, the boy affirms that he'll do his best, though Seokju finds the response rather disappointing. To cheer him up, Seokju gives him an expensive watch as a gift. Everyone in the group is confused about why something so expensive is being given to a newcomer. In any case, Seokju puts the watch on the boy's wrist and says that for a friend, something like this is nothing. After putting it on, the leader is pleased that the watch fits perfectly and comments that every man should have a good watch. Seo thanks the leader for his generosity, and Seokju reminds him to be careful not to break it. Without missing a beat, a girl known for being opportunistic shows up to check out Seo's gift. Trying to flirt with him, she uses her charm to get closer, which everyone there already knows is her usual approach. Soon, the girl moved in to kiss Seo on the cheek, but he pushed her away. He stood up, prompting Seokju to ask where he was going, and the boy replied that he was going out for a walk. The blonde girl was left confused by Seo's reaction, and the leader, in turn, said she could court him instead of the newbie. Obviously, the girl refused, and outside, Seo really did start walking. As he walked through a crowd of people, he thought about how his head hurt. Trying to figure out why, he blamed it on the secondhand smoke he was inhaling. In addition, his body felt stiff, which led him to think he was in a bad mood. Suddenly, he bumped into a rather large man who was walking with a few colleagues. The man immediately demanded that Seo apologize for bumping into his shoulder, but the boy showed indifference. Facing the boy, the bully noticed that Seo seemed to be in high school and again ordered him to apologize. He then asked which school Seo attended because, between two of the most famous schools, the delinquent had connections with their leaders. However, he had no idea that he was in trouble because Seo is from Yamen High, the most influential of all. Without wasting time, the boy kicked the leader in the head and introduced himself. Unexpectedly, the leader wasn't knocked out by the kick, which made him furious at Seo's boldness. He immediately ordered all of his cronies to attack Seo to make him pay for the humiliation. However, to Seo, it didn't matter how many bastards came at him, as people of that level would never be able to touch him. Without delay, he dodged the first blow coming his way as the other bullies closed in. After ducking, the boy responded with an upward elbow strike that took down his attacker. He then began to bob and weave, dodging all the attacks, and at one point grabbed one of them by the head. After grabbing it, Seo delivered a knee strike to the center of the bully's head, knocking him out. Seeing this, one of the knocked out guy's friends became furious and charged at Seo. But Seo dodged all the attacks again and countered with a single straight punch, which was enough to end the fight. With that, the two remaining delinquents joined the fight, and although they had Seo cornered, he wasn't in any danger. That's because his skill level was so high that he easily freed himself and defeated both of them. Finally, the bully who had bumped into Seo was the last one standing, and he threatened the boy, saying he was going to kill him. However, the man would need to be faster than Seo for that threat to be a real problem. Even though he had a knife, the thug couldn't defend himself from the boy, who closed in with a powerful punch. With that, all the delinquents were defeated by a single unarmed high school student. Civilians arrived late to the scene, wanting to call the police even though the fight was already over. Either way, Seo walked away as the situation no longer interested him, since everyone he fought was always the same. Before leaving, however, he remembered Philip's mission to defeat the student Kim. Since Kim was recommended directly by the leader of the Invincible gang, Seo became curious to see how strong he really was. Depending on Kim's skill level, Seo thought he might at least be entertained for a bit. For several weeks, the hero continued to train alongside Minchi and his new friend Bak. Obviously, the training was brutal due to the heavy load of exercises he was subjected to. However, little by little, Kim started to get used to it, and as with everything that begins, it eventually comes to an end. 3 weeks later, the protagonist began looking for the best outfit for the day he had trained so hard for. Before putting on his shirt, you could see that the muscles on his back had developed quite a bit in such a short time. Suddenly, Mitchell walked into his room, already asking if he was ready. Kim was embarrassed and asked her to knock before coming in next time. Today was the day of the protagonist's fight against Seo Doyen. Minchi asked if the hero was really confident he could win the duel. He thought for a moment, remembering the hard training thanks to her help, and realized he had to follow through on his commitments. In this case, he had to fight with all his strength. Later, everyone went to the designated location, a secluded building. As the much-anticipated fight drew near, a crowd began to form around the boys. Among them were Kim and Seo, along with the Invincible group watching from a distance. Besides the thugs, the group supporting the protagonist was also there to watch the fight unfold. The underdogs commented amongst themselves that it was the first time they had seen a fight so up close, comparing it to a martial arts match. Minchit quickly told everyone to shut up, but one of them complained since the match hadn't even started yet. Baek was the only one who remained silent, quietly rooting for the hero's victory with all her heart. Meanwhile, the thugs from the Invincible group were pleased with any outcome that might result. Naturally, to cheer on Seo, the members of the gang he belonged to also came to support him. Leader Seo Chu encouraged the boy to win for the good of the group and promised him a lot of money in return. However, the protagonist was determined to beat Seo no matter what it took. From a distance, all Minchit hoped was that Kim remembered the plan they had discussed together. Without wasting time, the hero took the initiative, saying that he had heard Seo was skilled at striking. So he provoked him, saying he would beat him in his own game using only strikes. In this context, Seo wasn't sure whether to be surprised or mock Kim's statement, as he didn't understand where this confidence was coming from. That was because throughout his years as a fighter, he had never lost a single fight. However, Seo didn't know that Kim hadn't lost any of his fights either, and without further delay, Seo threw the first punch. This action caught the protagonist off guard, and he barely managed to dodge. After narrowly escaping, Kim grew anxious because his opponent was as fast as expected. The punch had even grazed his nose. Witnessing everything, Philip praised Kim's technique, saying he was off to a good start. However, Seo quickly followed up with more rapid punches, giving Kim little time to defend. Once again, the hero dodged, but he knew this time it wasn't just a jab, anticipating the right cross as well. At that moment, Seo Chu shouted for the protagonist to fight like a man and stop just dodging like a coward. Meanwhile, Daniel gave his opinion on backpedaling, saying that while it looked good, it didn't allow for a counterattack. That's because the distance from the opponent kept increasing, and to win, you had to get closer. This time, however, the hero dodged with a downward weave, and the group of underdogs cheer even louder for the boy's success. Then, coming from the bottom to the top, the protagonist begins to articulate his plan as he opens the palm of his hand. Next, he unexpectedly lands a solid slap on Seo's face, leaving him in shock. As expected, the slap causes a wave of astonishment among all the spectators, both from the Invincible group and the Losers group. At this moment, the entire audience is surprised by the hero's boldness in slapping his opponent's face. In response to this disrespect, Seo asks what Kim is planning to do. The hero explains that he has watched all of Seo's videos on YouTube, concluding that he is not as skilled as he claims to be. Thus, the protagonist declares that he will defeat the bully using only the palms of his hands. Additionally, he says he will teach Seo how to fight, which ends up being the final spark that ignites Seo's fury. In the past, Minchit had concluded that Seo's skill level was extremely high and the only way to win would be by disrupting his focus. So after successfully completing this phase, the real plan would begin to unfold. Back in the present, the first part of the plan is complete as Seo is no longer as calm as usual. Because of this, the hero realizes that the provocation worked as Seo's movements are becoming larger. Thus, Kim dodges Seo's strike again, and when he finds an opening, he delivers another slap to his opponent's face. Obviously, these cheap provocations are driving Seo mad, and he begins to attack with less and less caution. In this context, however, the hero continues to dodge, and Philip is quite pleased with Kim's abilities. With little time left in the fight, another opening is found in Seo's stance, and thus the hero delivers yet another slap. This excites the Losers group, who begin to cheer for the protagonist, while Minchit remains anxious. Meanwhile, Seo Chu questions why Seo is so upset to the point that he is starting to get beaten like a fool. Then Seo hears the crowd's comments and decides to focus, even though he is already out of control. By maintaining his composure for a moment, he lands several powerful punches on Kim's guard. However, the excitement of the fight causes his emotions to flare up again, then he throws another wild punch. Because of this, Kim easily dodges by ducking, and Seo assumes he will be struck in the face again. But all of this was part of the hero's plan to deceive him, setting up his real counterattack with grappling. Thus, Kim managed to engage Seo fully in his grappling stance. From the beginning, the plan was to pretend to be a fighter specializing in strikes. For, at a certain point, the opponent would lower his guard, allowing Kim to secure an underhook and bring him to the ground. And since Seo lacked proficiency in other fighting styles, he would not be able to defend himself. Back to the present, the underhook technique was successfully executed by Kim. After securing the grip with both hands correctly, the next step was to lift the bully off the ground. Once lifted, the goal was to slam him to the ground to finish the fight once and for all. So after following everything Minchit had planned, the hero manages to take the famous striker to the ground. Finally, the undefeated fighter Seo Do-an is thrown to the ground, a place where he has no control. From afar, Philip watches with concern as a concrete ground is a terrible place to fall. However, the hero has no time to waste, because after taking him down, he still needs to finish him with a chokehold. Without delay, the protagonist begins to set up the move and from the mount position applies a triangle choke. Minchit had said that the jiu-jitsu technique is impossible to break when applied perfectly. She also advised the hero to make his opponent pass out from the hold, which would result in his victory. Back in the fight, Kim had secured the move perfectly, and to him, the fight was already over. But it wasn't just him who thought so, as Daniel closed his book, already preparing to leave. Given what he had seen so far, he remarked that Kim had prepared very well this time, As he was leaving, he still found it strange that a high school fight would end with a submission. However, Philip didn't let his friend leave, pointing out that when a jujitsu technique is fully locked in, there is no escape. Yet he also says there are still exceptions, which is demonstrated at that very moment as Seo slowly begins to break free from the choke. And in a tremendous turn of events, Seo manages to throw the hero headfirst to the ground. Then Philip explains that when there's physical strength and superiority, sometimes that can be enough to break the hold and escape. Thus, the hero is thrown far away and Seo barely manages to escape the move that almost finished him. From afar, Minchi is furious that Seo was able to escape with a simple bridge. With that, Baek interprets the term as something similar to the bridge made by the girl's hair. This, of course, makes her furious and ready to apply a chokehold that would finish Baek once and for all. Anyway, after calming down, Minchi explains that the bridge is a technique to escape the mount position. The person pushes up with their hips to throw off whoever is on top and escape, but this is something a beginner in ground fighting usually doesn't know. In this case, she asks Bak why this is happening since Seo has no training in this area. However, without receiving answers, she concludes that maybe Seo is acting on instinct. Thus, after recovering, Seo gets back into guard position and the hero complains of a headache. Changing the subject, Seo comments that it seems like Kim prepared a lot for the fight, but obviously, the hero isn't in the mood to talk, as the technique he practiced so much didn't amount to anything. In any case, he knows he can't fight standing up, so he tries bluffing again to take the fight to the ground. However, this technique was already being used for the second time, and Seo's counterattack was spot on. With a quick knee strike, Seo prevented the protagonist from grabbing him by the waist. And since the impact was very strong, the hero began to fall into a semi-conscious state. Seeing this, Seokju starts laughing at the protagonist, thinking the fight is now over. Meanwhile, Minchi understands the severity of this counterattack and hopes Kim can recover. By luck or miracle, he really does, and after being hit, Kim shows that he's okay again. However, obviously not that okay, since he thought his head was about to split open. In this case, Seo asked if the hero's preparation was entirely based around grappling techniques. Without getting any answers, Seo simply asked Kim to try and grab him again. Seeing this, the hero realizes that his opponent knows everything, but he came prepared. Because of that, he tries to mix feints with grappling techniques, but nothing he does works. Little by little, the semi-professional boy is reclaiming his place as the favorite in the fight. Seo, for his part, warns that for him to be taken down, Kim will need to get close enough to grab him. However, he believes the hero won't be able to get close enough because he can see all his movements. Without delay, Seo retaliated against Kim's frustrated attempts with a punch to the stomach and one to the face, followed by a high kick that, even though it was blocked by the hero, still managed to cause immense damage. Because of this, Minchi starts to grow anxious about the protagonist's stance, as he is only dodging and not counterattacking. From the hero's point of view, he already understands that he won't be able to grab Seo and decides to try exchanging punches. However, even after many attempts, Seo is still a semi-professional specializing in strikes, so he dodges easily. Watching everything, Minchi criticizes this strategy as Kim's punches are only creating openings. Inevitably, no matter how much the hero tried, he still couldn't land a hit. In Kim's view, trying to hit Seo was like waving his arms in the air with no purpose. So even though it's late, the protagonist realizes that he can't continue like this and decides to return to the main plan. However, before he could even think of a way to grab Seo, the latter charged in with a powerful hook followed by a kick to the ribs. Without delay, Seo chained the strikes with a spinning punch that hit the hero squarely. With this, the fight became more and more one-sided for Seo, causing his team to start boasting. Daniel, for his part, had completely changed his opinion and wasn't sure if Kim still had a chance. At this moment, Kim falls to his knees but manages to stand up again with great effort. In his mind, the hero thinks he has never felt so bad in a fight as he does now. Facing his enemy, he can't imagine a scenario where he could win. This is because the protagonist now sees Seo as an insurmountable wall that cannot be overcome. At this moment, Kim's enemy seemed able to see through all of his grappling movements. Without delay, Seo launched another strike that the hero quickly tried to block with his guard. However, it was a feint redirected to the pit of the protagonist's stomach. Immediately after, Seo also hit Kim's chin, turning the blow into a highly effective hook. Seo was closing in, getting closer and closer, taking advantage of Kim's exhaustion. Philip was the first to notice that Seo used one attack to draw attention and then followed up with an uppercut. Because of this, Daniel once again concluded that the fight was over and thought it was a waste of time to keep watching. Back in the fight, Seo delivered a front kick that threw the protagonist against a nearby wall. Without giving him time to rest, Seo approached and started attacking the hero with a flurry of punches. At this moment, Kim is completely cornered and no longer knows what to do to turn the situation around. However, he remembers everything he's been through up to this point and the promise Philip made, saying he wouldn't torment him anymore. This brings back his motivation because the hero no longer wants to be a plaything for bullies. To achieve his goal of living a peaceful life, he needs to get Seo Doyen out of his way. In this state of anger, Kim throws a few punches at the bully, which Seo easily dodges. Seeing this, the students in the crowd mock Kim, comparing his punches to a dance. Seo, in turn, says he will never be hit by such amateur moves and continues attacking the protagonist with all his strength. After many punches, he begins working low kicks into his offensive, and Kim feels the full pain of the strikes. In this context, Seo praises the protagonist's resilience but warns that he will continue until Kim falls. Then another series of punches is launched at Kim's guard, and he tries his best to defend himself. At this moment, Kim feels intense pain in his guard and also in the leg that was hit earlier. He is taking damage from all sides and can no longer withstand it all. In this case, the protagonist begins to see his defeat drawing closer and closer. But Minchi still believes in Kim and from afar questions what he thinks he's doing. She tells back that it's time for them to do what was planned, and Baek recalls the plan. Earlier, Minchi had given an alternative in case the wrestling and jiu-jitsu techniques didn't work. In such a case, it would be necessary to use this secret card, and with her hunch, Seo would definitely fall to it. At first, Kim still couldn't grasp the magnitude of the plan. Then it was agreed that a signal would be given at the most critical moment, which was exactly now. The signal came with a shout from Baek Daesum, who removed her hood and told Kim to finish off the piece of trash that Seo was. Finishing her shout, she told the hero not to lose to this bully and to take him down. Inevitably, due to the years of connection Seo had with Baek, he turned and gave a lot of attention to her statement. Without delay, he was faced with the scene in front of him, with his beloved calling him trash. In this context, Minchi had said that if her hunch was correct, Seo's affection for Baek would change everything, and even though it was quite dishonest, they would use this to their advantage. After all, even in real matches, the second fighter intentionally provokes the opponent to unsettle their mind. This was the second fighter's distraction strategy, effectively reproduced by Baek. The shouts from Baek, who Seo loves so much, began to shake the bully, causing him to tremble with distress. For him, it was unthinkable that Baek would say something so harsh, and to his misfortune, the students also started mocking him. In this case, Ken realizes that the provocation worked and quickly remembered that he should keep provoking Seo. So the hero called him trash and asked why he was crying. Unexpectedly, Seo really was crying, and this reaction made Kim realize just how effective the provocation was. Seo, in turn, could no longer hold back his emotions and charge at the protagonist again. However, this time Kim was able to easily dodge due to Seo's lack of control, which caused him to hit the wall with full force. Gradually, Seo's strikes became wide and unskilled. So little by little, the protagonist manages to regain his position in the fight. Unlike before, when Seo threw punches with technical precision, now his fist pulls back before swinging and his movements neglect his guard. Everyone forgets the basics when they get excited, and this creates an opening, just as Minchi had said. In this case, the opening had to be found, and the first one is easily noticed by Kim. Seo's punches are becoming wider, along with his guard, which is more exposed than before. A high guard means the body is exposed, and soon Kim remembers the front kick he learned from Minchi to strike the liver. So this was the most opportune moment to put into practice what he had learned. And with Seo out of control, the hero was finally able to hit him squarely. So the video ends here. If you don't want to miss the next part, activate the notification bell, and see you next time on Tob's channel.